It is not difficult to do, for the landscape has barely changed. To your left, a small village nestles against the hillside. The houses are low, built with dark wood and sloped slate roofs to withstand the winter snows. From some stone chimneys, a thin and steady thread of white smoke escapes, smelling of oak wood burning in the hearth. It is the universal scent of shelter and a warm dinner. In the distance, the sound of a bell floats in the air. It is a deep and low tolling coming from a small Romanesque church, whose square tower barely rises above the trees. The sound travels slowly, bouncing gently off the slopes, marking the hour of vespers. It is a call to calm, a signal for the laborers to leave their tools and return home. You visualize the people of that era. You see a peasant walking along a parallel path, patiently guiding an ox pulling a cart loaded with hay. The wood of the cart creaks rhythmically, a hypnotic sound that mixes with the chirping of the crickets beginning to wake. The peasant wears a tunic of coarse wool, dyed in earth tones, and a hood that protects him from the evening dampness. There is no urgency in his step. His life is dictated by the sunlight, and now that the sun is leaving, his day ends in peace. You keep walking, feeling your own shoulders relax. The tension dissipates with every exhalation. You realize that you are following a route that has been traveled by millions of souls before you. This is the path of seekers, of kings, and of pilgrims. You think of Aymeric Picard, that 12th century French monk who traveled these same paths on horseback. It is said that he wrote the first guide for travelers crossing these lands, describing in detail where to find fresh water and where to rest safely. You imagine Aymeric stopping right where you are now, taking out a parchment and a quill, noting the beauty of this sunset. Perhaps he also felt this same peace, this feeling that the world is vast and beautiful, and that there is a place for everyone in it. For Aymeric and his contemporaries, the path was not just a transit route, but a metaphor for life itself. Every step was a prayer, every rest a blessing. He described these valleys as lands of abundance, where the rivers were full of fish and the forests teeming with game. Looking around you, you see that he was right. A stream runs parallel to the path, its crystal clear waters reflecting the last orange rays of the sun. The sound of running water is soft, a constant murmur that cleanses the mind of unnecessary thoughts.
The light changes subtly. The amber of the walls now turns into a soft violet. The sky, previously light blue, begins to dress in a deep indigo blue toward the east, while the west maintains a fringe of pale fire. The temperature drops a couple of degrees, a pleasant freshness that caresses your face and invites you to wrap yourself better in your clothes. You pass by an old dry stone wall that delimits a field of already harvested wheat. On the wall, a cat watches the sunset with squinted eyes, completely motionless, enjoying the residual heat given off by the rocks. It is an image of absolute tranquility. Everything in this place invites rest. Further ahead, the path widens slightly as it approaches a stone bridge. It is a single arch bridge, solid and robust, crossing the stream. Its stones are worn by the passage of countless sandals and horse hooves over the centuries. As you cross it, you stop for a moment in the center. You lean on the parapet and watch the water pass below. The flow is continuous, eternal. It reminds you that everything passes, that everything flows, and that your worries are as fleeting as the leaves floating in the current. On the other side of the bridge, the path continues toward a small forest of chestnut trees. The branches of the trees form a natural tunnel, a vault of leaves that begins to darken. But you feel no fear, only protection. The trees are ancient, with thick and twisted trunks that look like wise elders watching over the forest's sleep. The ground under the trees is covered with dry leaves that muffle your steps, making your walk almost silent. You feel a deep connection with the history of this place. You are not a stranger here. You are part of the chain of travelers who have sought refuge and peace on these paths. The citadel, now a dark silhouette against the twilight sky, remains behind, watchful. Its function is no longer war, but memory.
The first star appears in the firmament, shy and bright.
It is the definitive sign that the day has concluded. Your breathing is slow and deep. The rhythm of your heart keeps pace with the calm of the surroundings. There is nothing more to do today. There are no emails to answer, nor calls to attend to. Only exists this path, this moment, and the certainty that rest is near. You venture a little further onto the path, feeling how the night envelops you with its protective mantle, soft and silent. The modern world has completely disappeared, and in its place, only the serenity of the ancient land and the promise of a restorative sleep remain. Everything is calm. Everything is well. Chapter 2. You observe how the villagers gather their tools with slow movements, and the chimneys of the houses exhale a soft smoke that mixes with the violet mist of nightfall. Part 2. Daylight does not disappear all at once, but retreats with a ceremonial slowness, as if the sun wanted to caress the hills one last time before leaving them under the care of the moon. You are still there, on that path of compacted earth and ancient stones, breathing the air that now becomes cooler, sharper. Around you, the modern world has completely dissolved, leaving room only for the essence of a pastime, a time where the clock did not mark the hours, but the tolling of a distant bell or the position of shadows on the grass. As you move forward with a steady pace, your boots crunch softly on the gravel. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic sound that accompanies your slow breathing. In front of you, the valley opens gently, revealing a small medieval village that seems to have sprouted from the earth itself, with houses of robust stone and dark slate roofs that shine faintly under the twilight. The sky has been tinted a deep violet, a mixture of indigo blue and the last reddish sigh of the sunset. It is the magic hour, the exact moment when work ceases and rest promises its arrival.
You observe how the villagers, silent and serene figures in the distance, gather their tools with slow movements. There is no rush in their gestures. An older man, dressed in a tunic of coarse brown wool, carefully cleans the blade of his hoe. He does so with respect, thanking the metal for the day's effort. You see how he passes an old cloth over the iron, removing the remains of damp earth, before throwing the tool over his shoulder and beginning his walk toward the warmth of home. Further on, near a low stone wall covered in moss, two women gather wicker baskets. They have been collecting aromatic herbs and perhaps the last fruits of a nearby orchard. The scent reaches you, carried by a gentle breeze. It is a mixture of rosemary, thyme, and wet earth. They walk slowly, sharing the silence, knowing that the day has fulfilled its purpose. Their long skirts brush against the tall grass of the path, producing a rustle that blends with the song of the crickets beginning to wake. The village feels like a refuge. The houses are not mere constructions, they are fortresses of intimacy. The walls are thick, made of irregular masonry, designed to keep the heat in winter and the cool in summer. As you approach, you notice the details of daily life from long ago. A wooden cart rests beside a barn, its wheels reinforced with iron, motionless, resting as well until dawn. A shepherd dog, woolly and calm, curls up beside an oak door, sighing with satisfaction. It is then that your gaze stops at the chimneys. From each of them, from those stone structures that crown the roofs, a soft, white, and grayish smoke begins to exhale. The smoke rises straight toward the violet sky, undisturbed by the wind, and blends with the mist beginning to rise from the nearby river. That smoke carries with it the message of comfort. It means the fire has been lit, the soup is warming in the cauldron, and the family will soon gather around the hearth. You imagine, or perhaps perceive with the clarity of a dream, a character who might have been observing this same scene centuries ago. In the portico of the small Romanesque church of the village, a figure sits on a worn stone bench. It could be Gonzalo de Berceo, the first poet of known name in the Spanish language. He is a man in a simple habit, a cleric who loves the everyday. You imagine him there, with a parchment on his knees and a quill in his hand, pausing his writing because the light no longer allows him to continue. Gonzalo observes the same thing you do.
the peace of the sunset. He does not seek great battles or palace intrigues. His mind is on the beauty of the simple. He watches the peasants return and finds in this a profound sacredness. He smiles slightly as he sees the night envelop the valley, perhaps thinking of his verses about a green and sweet-smelling meadow, a place of rest for the weary traveler. His presence in your imagination is not academic or distant. It is that of a traveling companion who understands the value of silence and contemplation. You feel that he, from his time, and you, from yours, share this same moment of absolute serenity. You continue your way, approaching the first houses. The light inside the dwellings is warm, orange, produced by the flames of the firewood and some tallow candles. Through a small window, barely a gap in the stone covered with a waxed cloth or a half-open wooden shutter, you glimpse the movement of shadows inside. It is a slow and comforting dance. Someone places a plate on a sturdy wooden table. Someone else pulls a bench closer to the fire. The temperature has dropped enough for the air to feel cool on your face, a delicious contrast to the idea of the heat emanating from the houses. You wrap yourself a little more in your own clothes, feeling the texture of the fabric, and that sense of shelter brings you immediate pleasure. You are safe. You are protected. There is nothing you must do now, no pending task, no message to answer. There only exists this slow walk along a cobblestone street that has seen thousands of souls pass by over the centuries. The village church rises modestly in the center. Its tower is low and solid, and its bronze bell remains silent, though its presence imposes a sense of order and protection over the village. The stone of the church has a golden tone under the last light, and you can see the details carved into the arch of the entrance, figures of animals, vine leaves, and stars, eroded by time but still visible. They are silent witnesses to the faith and perseverance of those who built this place stone by stone. The sound of your footsteps changes slightly as you step onto the cobblestones of the main square. Here there is an ancient well with a stone curb and a wrought iron arch. You stop for a moment beside it. You look down into the darkness of the deep water, and then up, where the first stars begin to pierce the violet mantle of the sky. They are timid but steady points of light, like beacons guiding rest.
The violet mist of dusk has definitively settled over the roofs. The outline of the distant mountains softens until it becomes a dark and protective silhouette embracing the valley. The entire landscape seems to exhale, releasing the tension accumulated during the day. The birds have already tucked themselves into their nests. Only the deep hooting of an owl can be heard far off, a guardian of the night, watching over the village's sleep. You feel a deep connection to this place. You are not a stranger here. You are part of this eternal cycle of day and night, of work and rest. The serenity of the villagers is contagious. You feel your own muscles relax, imitating the ease with which they left their tools. Your shoulders drop, your jaw loosens, and your breathing becomes even deeper and slower, synchronizing with the measured rhythm of medieval life. The poet Gonzalo, in your mind, gathers his writing utensils and rises slowly, heading toward the calm of the cloister. You also feel ready to leave movement behind. The village has welcomed you with its stillness, with the smoke from its chimneys smelling of oak and holm oak, an ancestral aroma that awakens an ancient memory of safety and home within you. The night is no longer a promise, but a soft and enveloping reality. The darkness is not fearsome. It is a velvet mantle inviting you to close your eyes. Everything is in its place. The tools are put away. The animals are in their stables. The fire is lit. And you, traveler of time and dreams, are wrapped in an unbreakable peace, ready to let yourself be carried away by the quiet current of rest, while the village sleeps under the infinite sky. Chapter 3. You hear the last rhythmic strike of a blacksmith's hammer, who, satisfied with his day's labor, lets the orange embers of his forge slowly extinguish in the twilight. Part 3. Your footsteps echo with a reassuring softness on the irregular cobblestones of the narrow street. Night has fully descended upon the village, bringing with it a mantle of deep and silent blue that covers the slate and wooden roofs. The air is cool, clean, with that pure quality found only far from large cities, an air that fills your lungs and oxygenates every corner of your mind. As you walk, wrapped in the safety of this medieval refuge, a sound captures your attention. It is not a strident noise, but a constant, low, and musical beat. It is the ring of metal against metal. As you move forward, turning a corner where an old stone manor casts its protective shadow, you discover the origin of that hypnotic rhythm. In front of you, under a porch of oak beams blackened by time, lies the village smithy. It is the only place where human activity still persists, but not with the urgency of the day, rather with the calm of a task completed. The smith, a man of broad shoulders and slow movements, is giving the final touches to his work. You stop to observe from a prudent distance, feeling like an invisible spectator of an ancestral art. The scene looks like a painting rendered in light and shadow. The interior of the workshop is bathed in a warm, orange, and welcoming glow emanating from the central forge. It is a light that flickers softly, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls, where tools, tongs, and hammers hang, meticulously ordered. The smith raises his hammer. He does not do so with brute force, but with the precision of one who knows the secret of iron. He lets the tool fall onto the anvil. The sound is clear, resonant, almost like a bell announcing the end of the day. 1.
It is a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each strike seems to settle the calm in the world a little more. You watch as the man turns the piece of metal, perhaps a fitting for a door or a simple farming tool. The object no longer glows with the intense red of extreme heat. Now it has a dark cherry tone, fading little by little, returning to its solid and permanent state. The blacksmith stops. He passes the back of his hand across his forehead, wiping away the sweat of an honest day. He sighs, and although you cannot hear it, you imagine it is a sigh of deep satisfaction. He has transformed matter with his hands. He has created something useful and lasting. That sense of simple and tangible achievement is transmitted to you, relaxing your own shoulders, releasing any tension you might hold. Now the closing ritual begins. It is a slow process, almost ceremonial, inviting you to lower your own internal revolutions. The man takes long tongs and begins to disperse the embers gathered in the heart of the forge. The coals, which moments before roared with vitality, are gently separated. As they spread, their intense orange glow begins to soften. You stare at those points of light. They are like small stars trapped in the earth that little by little accept their rest. The glow dims. The vibrant orange gives way to a deep terracotta red, and finally, the edges of the coals are covered by a thin layer of gray ash. It is like watching a miniature sunset, accelerated and contained in a bed of stone. The light in the workshop gradually diminishes, and with it, your eyelids feel a little heavier, a little more relaxed. The blacksmith puts the tools back in their place. The clink of the metal as it is hung in its spot is soft. Then he takes a wooden ladle and dips it into a nearby bucket of water. He washes his hands and face. The sound of the water is cool, liquid, and relaxing. You imagine the sensation of freshness on your own skin, washing away the fatigue, preparing you for rest. It is a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each strike seems to settle the calm in the world a little more. You watch as the man turns the piece of metal, perhaps a fitting for a door or a simple farming tool. The object no longer glows with the intense red of extreme heat. Now it has a dark cherry tone, fading little by little, returning to its solid and permanent state. The blacksmith stops. He passes the back of his hand across his forehead, wiping away the sweat of an honest day. He sighs, and although you cannot hear it, you imagine it is a sigh of deep satisfaction. He has transformed matter with his hands. He has created something useful and lasting. That sense of simple and tangible achievement is transmitted to you, relaxing your own shoulders, releasing any tension you might hold. Now the closing ritual begins. It is a slow process, almost ceremonial, inviting you to lower your own internal revolutions. The man takes long tongs and begins to disperse the embers gathered in the heart of the forge. The coals, which moments before roared with vitality, are gently separated. As they spread, their intense orange glow begins to soften. You stare at those points of light. They are like small stars trapped in the earth that little by little accept their rest. The glow dims. The vibrant orange gives way to a deep terracotta red, and finally, the edges of the coals are covered by a thin layer of gray ash. It is like watching a miniature sunset, accelerated and contained in a bed of stone. The light in the workshop gradually diminishes, and with it, your eyelids feel a little heavier, a little more relaxed. The blacksmith puts the tools back in their place. The clink of the metal as it is hung in its spot is soft. Then he takes a wooden ladle and dips it into a nearby bucket of water. He washes his hands and face. The sound of the water is cool, liquid, and relaxing. You imagine the sensation of freshness on your own skin, washing away the fatigue, preparing you for rest.
With calm movements, the craftsman heads toward the large wooden doors of the workshop. They are heavy gates, made of thick planks reinforced with iron. He begins to close one of the leaves. The hinge, well greased, barely emits a faint groan of old wood. The leaf closes, hiding half of the view of the workshop, reducing the light that escapes into the street. Then he pushes the second leaf. The space of light is reduced to a vertical line, thinner and thinner, until the two doors meet. You hear the dull and definitive sound of the wood fitting into place, clunk, followed by the sliding of a security bar. The light has disappeared. Now only the night, the moon, and you remain. But it is not an empty darkness. Through the cracks in the wood, you can still perceive the unmistakable scent of the forge, a mixture of charcoal, iron, and dry earth. It is an ancient smell, an aroma that has accompanied humanity for centuries, a smell of home and protection. You walk away slowly from the smithy, resuming your path through the village. The silence is now absolute, but it is a silence full of presence. You feel that the houses around you are sleeping. The thick stone walls, built hundreds of years ago, protect the dreams of those who dwell within. You feel part of that protection. Nothing bad can happen here. Time has stopped in this moment of perfect peace. Looking up, you observe the silhouette of the Romanesque church that dominates the small square. Its square tower is silhouetted against an incredibly starry sky. Without the pollution of modern lights, the Milky Way unfolds like a river of diamond dust over your head. It is the same sky that kings and peasants, monks and warriors looked upon. It is the same sky under which Alfonso X the Wise rested, perhaps in a village very similar to this one, seeking inspiration in the stillness of the stars for his cantigas. The connection with history feels real and palpable. You are not a stranger here. You are a traveler, welcomed by the night. The breeze gently moves the leaves of an old elm in the center of the square, creating a whisper that lulls you. Shh, shh. Your steps become slower, heavier. The walk has deeply relaxed you. The image of the blacksmith's dying embers remains etched in your mind, a visual reminder that it is time to extinguish your own thoughts, to let mental activity be covered by a soft ash of oblivion and rest. The temperature is perfect. You wrap yourself a little more in your clothes, enjoying that contrast between the cool night air and the warmth your body retains. It is a sensation of nest, of refuge.
In the distance, at the end of the street, you spot an inn. A single oil lantern hangs by the entrance, emitting a dim, golden light that barely dares to challenge the darkness, but rather accompanies it kindly. The flame does not flicker. It is still, protected by the glass, waiting. You know that there you will find a soft place, clean sheets smelling of lavender, and the absolute silence you need. But there is no rush to arrive. You enjoy these last few meters under the open sky. Each breath is an act of calm. You inhale the peace of the village. You exhale any worry. You inhale the history of the stones. You exhale the weight of the present. Everything is in order. The blacksmith rests. The fire sleeps. The village dreams. And you, wrapped in this atmosphere of unbreakable serenity, feel how gravity becomes a kind ally, inviting you to let go, to let yourself be carried away, to submerge yourself in the tranquil depth of the medieval night that welcomes you with open arms. Chapter 4. You enter a sturdy wooden inn where the murmur of low voices and the aroma of hot stew and old wood envelop you in a sense of secure welcome. Here is part 4 of your story, designed to induce sleep and maintain immersion in this medieval journey. Part 4. Before you, the facade of the inn rises solid and promising, a structure of stone and dark wooden beams that seem to have supported the roof for centuries. The door is of solid oak, reinforced with black iron bands that, though rustic, denote the security of a well-built refuge. As you bring your hand closer, you feel the rough, cold texture of the wood under your fingers, an immediate contrast to the warmth you know awaits you on the other side. You push the door gently. The hinges, well-oiled, give way without a single creak, allowing you passage into an interior world bathed in amber and golden tones. As you cross the threshold, the cool night air is left behind, blocked by the firm closing of the door at your back. Immediately, a wave of soft and comforting heat envelops you. It is not a suffocating heat, but the thermal embrace of a well-tended home where the fire has been burning steadily since dawn. The aroma is the first thing that captivates your senses and tells you that you have reached a place of rest. It smells of pine and oak wood burning slowly in the large stone fireplace. It smells of dried herbs hanging from the low beams, rosemary, thyme, and sage, mixing with the dense and savory steam of a stew bubbling in an iron cauldron. It is an ancient, primal smell that awakens a quiet hunger and promises satiety. Your eyes adjust to the cozy gloom. The lighting here is not from flickering torches, but from the constant orange glow of the central fireplace and several thick tallow candles distributed on the tables. The light is soft, liquid, creating long and gentle shadows that dance slowly on the irregular stone walls. You move slowly toward the interior of the common room. The floor under your boots is of packed earth, compact and covered by a fresh layer of rushes and dried lavender, which crunch softly with every step you take, releasing a clean and floral scent that intertwines with the smell of firewood. Despite there being other people in the room, a respectful calm reigns. There are no shouts, no strident songs, nor the chaos of a port tavern. Here, the murmur of voices is low, a constant and deep hum that acts as a lullaby. Travelers speak in confidential whispers, sharing news of the roads, or simply enjoying the shared silence.
You head toward an empty table near the hearth. The wood of the table is thick, polished by the rubbing of thousands of sleeves and elbows over the decades, soft to the touch and full of scars that tell the history of the inn. You sit on a sturdy bench, and as you do, You feel the weight of the walk fall from your shoulders, sliding to the floor and disappearing among the rushes. From your position, you observe the quiet life of this medieval refuge. Near the window, an older man, dressed in simple wool robes, reviews some parchments by candlelight. He could be a merchant from the Hanseatic League, or perhaps a traveling scribe, documenting routes and tolls. His quill scratches the paper with a rhythmic sound, scritch, scratch, which adds to the relaxing symphony of the place. At another table, two figures play concentrated over a carved wooden board. They move chess pieces with slow deliberation. This game, brought from distant lands and popularized by wise kings like Alfonso X, has become a silent pastime for tired minds. The soft clack of a wooden piece being placed on the board is the only sound that interrupts their concentration. There is no competition on their faces, only the peace of strategy and mental rest. A woman, the innkeeper, approaches your table. She does not need to ask what you desire. Her experience tells her that a night traveler seeks warmth and sustenance. With fluid and unhurried movements, she places a rustic ceramic bowl in front of you, from which a white and aromatic steam emanates. Beside it, she places a piece of dark bread, dense and with a crunchy crust, and a cup of spiced wine that smells of cinnamon and cloves. You hold the bowl with both hands before eating, letting the heat of the ceramic transfer to your palms, thawing any trace of the outside cold. As you taste the stew, the flavor is deep and earthy, slow-cooked root vegetables, tender meat that falls apart, and just the right touch of salt. Each spoonful anchors you more to this moment, to this chair, to this security. As you eat slowly, your gaze is lost in the flames of the fireplace. The fire is hypnotic. The logs are consumed with a deliberate slowness, changing from brown to black and then to a bright and throbbing red. The sparks rise up the chimney like small ephemeral stars seeking the night sky you left outside. You think of the paths you have traveled to get here, the dirt trails, the stone bridges over crystal-clear streams, the silent villages under the moon. Everything seems distant now, part of a dream you had before entering this warmth. Inside here, time seems to have stopped. The urgency of tomorrow does not exist, nor the worries of yesterday. There is only the crackling of the firewood and the feeling of being protected by walls that have seen history pass by without flinching. You notice details in the architecture that had previously escaped you. The ceiling beams are carved with simple geometric motifs, perhaps symbols of protection or blessings for the house. In a corner, an old tapestry, somewhat faded by smoke and years, hangs from the wall, showing a hunting scene or perhaps a local legend, its threads telling a story that no one remembers exactly anymore, but which provides a sense of continuity and permanence. You finish your meal and push the bowl gently toward the center of the table. Your body feels heavy, but it's a pleasant heaviness, that of muscles relaxing completely after an honest effort. Your eyelids begin to grow heavy, responding to the slow rhythm of the inn. The scribe has put away his parchments. The chess players have collected their pieces. The murmur of voices has become even fainter, almost imperceptible, blending with the sound of the wind that now blows softly outside, unable to penetrate the fortress of this refuge. The innkeeper passes by again, this time extinguishing some of the more distant candles, reducing the room to an intimate gloom dominated only by the glow of the embers. She makes a kind gesture toward a wooden staircase at the back of the room, indicating that the upper rooms are ready.
You stand up slowly. The wood of the floor creaks familiarly under your feet. You climb the steps one by one, feeling the solidity of the construction under your weight. Reaching the upper floor, a narrow hallway leads you to your room. It is small, austere, but immaculate. A bed with a mattress of fresh straw covered by thick linen sheets and wool blankets awaits you. There is a small window in the room. Through the thick and slightly irregular glass, you see the stars again, but now you observe them from the absolute safety of your refuge. The village sleeps. The blacksmith sleeps. The medieval world rests under the mantle of night. You sit on the edge of the bed, untying your boots, feeling how the absolute silence of the room invites you to let go. You lie back, and the wool envelops you, warm and coarse, a real and honest fabric. Cierras los ojos, and the image of the fire from the ground floor persists in your mind, a point of warm light that guides you gently towards sleep. Everything is calm. You are safe. The night is your guardian. Chapter 5. You leave the village behind to walk slowly toward the castle, feeling the cool night breeze caress your face as the first torches begin to be lit on the walls. Part 5. The heavy wooden gate of the inn closes behind you with a soft, dull thud, trapping inside the murmur of the travelers and the aroma of spices and wood smoke. As you turn around, the night air greets you like a cool balm on your skin, a revitalizing contrast after the cozy warmth of the hall. It is not cold, it is simply that perfect temperature of late summer nights, where the breeze brings with it the smell of damp earth and freshly cut grass from the fields surrounding the village. You adjust the folds of your cloak over your shoulders, feeling the texture of the coarse wool but warm under your fingers, and you begin to walk. Your steps ring out rhythmically on the irregular cobblestones of the main street. The village is entering its own sleep. The shutters of low stone and adobe houses are already closed, and only thin threads of golden light escape through the cracks, revealing that inside, families are finishing their dinners or preparing for rest. Everything is calm. A dog barks in the distance, a lazy sound without urgency that fades quickly, absorbed by the vastness of the darkening sky above your head. You move forward slowly, in no hurry to arrive, simply enjoying the leisurely movement of your legs and the clean air filling your lungs. You leave behind the market square, now empty and silent, where the wooden stalls rest covered by tarpaulins until dawn. The central fountain murmurs its eternal song of water falling on stone, a constant and crystalline sound that seems to mark the quiet pulse of the night. The path begins to slope very gently upward. You are leaving the protection of the clustered houses to head toward the structure that dominates the landscape, the castle. It is not an arduous climb, but a wide path of packed earth, flanked by old oaks and cypresses that stand like silent guardians in the gloom. Looking up, you see the silhouette of the fortress silhouetted against a sky that has turned from deep blue to an almost black indigo tone. It is a solid, imposing construction, but tonight it inspires no fear or war, but rather an unshakable security. Its thick walls are the promise of protection, an anchor of stone in the midst of changing nature. As you walk, the breeze becomes a bit more noticeable, caressing your face and gently moving the leaves of the trees above you. The whisper of the wind among the branches is hypnotic, a soft hiss that invites you to clear your mind. You think of those who live behind those walls. It is said that King Alfonso, whom they call the Wise, is in the region. He is not a king who seeks the din of battle in these lands, but knowledge. You imagine the monarch in one of those high towers, surrounded by scrolls and astrolabes, waiting for the night to be absolute to observe the firmament. It is comforting to think of that historical figure up there, seeking order and beauty in the stars, while the world sleeps at his feet. The presence of the court brings no agitation, but a sense of order. You know that the roads are guarded, that the laws are respected, and that tonight, peace is the only ruler of these lands.
You continue your leisurely ascent. The dirt path is soft under your boots. With every step, you feel lighter, as if you were leaving behind down in the valley any worry you might have carried. Here, on the path to the fortress, only the present exists, the sound of your steps, the wind, and the protective presence of history. Then it happens. As if the castle were waking up to watch over your sleep, you see the first light. At the top of the outer wall, an orange spark comes to life. It is a torch that has just been lit. The flame dances with the wind, small and brave in the vastness of the night. You watch as, a few seconds later, another light appears a few meters away to the right, and then another. It is a silent and methodical ritual. The night guards walk the ramparts, lighting the torches one by one. There are no cries of alarm, only the sacred routine of illuminating the darkness. The warm lights outline the shape of the castle, creating a crown of terrestrial stars that compete with those beginning to flicker timidly in the firmament. You stop for a moment to watch the spectacle. You rest your hand on the rough trunk of a nearby tree, feeling the cold, solid bark. From your position, you see how the glow of the torches is faintly reflected on the gray stone of the towers, tinting them a soft amber. The smoke from the torches rises straight toward the sky before dissipating, carrying with it a faint smell of resin and oil that reaches you, mixing with the scent of the countryside. It is an image of absolute stability. The castle, with its lights lit, looks like a great stone ship anchored in a safe harbor. You know that those lights will burn until the sun rises again, tireless sentinels that allow you and all the inhabitants of the village to rest without fear. You resume your walk, getting closer and closer to the main entrance. The stone bridge crossing the dry moat is solid and wide. The sound of your steps changes, becoming more resonant on the stone, a deep and reassuring echo. Arriving near the barbican, you see two guards. They are still, leaning on their spears, talking in low voices. There is no tension in their postures. One of them laughs softly at something the other says, a human and close laughter that breaks the solemnity of the stone. They see you approaching and nod their heads, a gesture of quiet recognition. You are a traveler, a guest, and here you are welcome. You don't need to enter the heart of the fortress yet.
You feel drawn to a stone bench located just before the gates, under the shelter of the outer wall. You sit there, letting your back rest against the stone, which still retains a slight warmth from the afternoon sun. From this elevated position, you can look back at the path you have traveled. Below, the village is now a cluster of soft shadows, with barely a couple of lights flickering like candles about to go out. Beyond, the forest is a dark and serene blanket. And above all that, the dome of the sky, now completely starry, unfolds in all its majesty. You feel a deep peace, a sense of belonging. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go urgently. You are under the protection of the walls, under the gaze of the stars, and wrapped in the embrace of a medieval night that seems to stop time. The wind blows once more, a long and fresh sigh that invites you to close your eyes for a moment. You hear the distant crackling of the torches on the battlements and the rhythmic chirping of crickets in the grass of the moat. Everything is in its place. The world turns slowly, safely, and in silence. Here, at the castle gates, the night is not an end, but a refuge. You stay still, breathing in the calm, feeling how the weight of gravity gently anchors you to the earth, while your mind clears, preparing for the deep rest you know will come soon. The fortress watches, and you can finally let go of all effort. Chapter 6. You contemplate the great banquet hall, now empty and silent, where heavy tapestries muffle your steps and the hunting dogs sleep peacefully by the residual fire.
Here is part 6, a story written following your instructions for tone, style, and content. Part 6. You rise slowly from the stone bench, leaving behind the coolness of the starry night and the silent company of the guards at the gate. As you cross the threshold into the interior of the fortress, the world changes subtly. The fresh, crisp air of the outside gives way to a denser, warmer, and more welcoming atmosphere. It is an ancient and familiar aroma, a mixture of wood seasoned by the years, melted beeswax, and the faint trace of aromatic herbs scattered on the floor to sweeten the environment, dried lavender, mint, and fresh rushes. You walk through a short corridor of polished stone until you reach the entrance of the Great Hall. As you cross the archway, you stop for a moment to take in the magnitude of the space. This is the heart of the castle, the place where hours before, the laughter, The music of lutes and the clinking of pewter cups resonated. But now the banquet hall rests. It is empty and plunged into a respectful silence, as if the room itself were taking a deep breath before dawn. The room is immense, with a high ceiling that loses itself in the shadows, supported by oak beams as thick as the trunk of a century-old tree. Despite its size, it does not feel cold or intimidating. On the contrary, the space envelops you. The stone walls, which might seem austere during the day, are now covered almost entirely by heavy and magnificent tapestries. You advance slowly over the flagstones, and you notice how the sound of your boots is immediately absorbed. The tapestries fulfill their function perfectly. They not only tell stories of ancient hunts and legends of distant kingdoms with their threads of wool and silk, but they act as a coat for the room, muffling any noise and retaining the heat accumulated during the day. You approach one of the walls to observe the details in the gloom. The light is scarce, coming only from the large hearth at the back of the room and a couple of tallow candles slowly dying in wrought iron candelabras. However, it is enough to appreciate the mastery of the embroidery. You see noble figures, green forests, and blue skies woven with infinite patience. You think of the hands that worked these fabrics, of the life, everyday life of the artisans who stitch by stitch built this refuge of color against the gray of the stone. You continue moving toward the center of the hall. The long, solid wood tables have been cleared and tidied with meticulous efficiency. The wood, dark and shiny from use and oil, faintly reflects the orange glow of the embers. Everything is in order. There is a sense of purpose fulfilled in this room, the satisfaction of a day that has ended well under the rule of a prudent king. Thinking of the monarch, you recall the stories told about this court. It is said that King Alfonso, known for his love of knowledge and the stars, often stays awake late in his private chambers, consulting astronomy books or dictating verses to his scribes. But down here, in the hall, his presence is felt in the reigning stability. There is no chaos, only a structured calm. It is the peace that arises when wisdom guides the government, allowing its inhabitants to sleep without fear. Your steps finally lead you toward the immense fireplace that dominates the north wall. It is a gigantic stone mouth, large enough for a man to stand inside it. The roaring fire from dinner has burned down, giving way to a mountain of glowing embers, a bed of coals that pulses with red and gold light, radiating a soft and constant heat that caresses your face. In front of the hearth, on sheepskin rugs and woven straw mats, the castle dogs rest. They are large hounds and hunting greyhounds, noble animals with short coats and long limbs, designed for speed and strength, but now the very image of placidity. There are at least half a dozen of them. Some sleep stretched out on their sides, paws extended toward the heat, while others are curled into compact balls, snouts tucked under tails. You move carefully to not wake them, though their sleep seems deep and confident.
You sit in a high-backed wooden chair, carved with floral motifs, which has been left facing the fire. The leather of the seat creaks softly as it receives your weight, a homely sound that is lost in the immensity of the hall. From here, you observe the animals. One of the hounds, a sand-colored dog with long, velvety ears, sighs in its sleep. Its flank rises and falls with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. You see its paws move spasmodically for a second, perhaps chasing an imaginary hare in the fields of sleep, before relaxing completely again. The sound of its breathing, added to the occasional soft crackle of the wood breaking in the embers, creates a sedating melody. It is a scene of medieval domestic life in its purest form. Far from battles and politics, life in the castle is reduced to this: warmth, shelter, and rest. You notice the details of the surroundings near the fire. There is a basket of neatly stacked firewood, oak logs ready for the next morning. Beside it, iron tongs rest against the stone. On a side table, someone has forgotten a closed prayer book and a glass with a remnant of wine, silent witnesses to the evening that has already passed. The heat from the fireplace begins to penetrate your clothes, loosening the tension in your shoulders and back. You take off your traveling cloak and place it over your knees like an additional blanket. The wool is coarse but warm, and it smells of wind and night. You allow yourself to close your eyes for a moment, listening to the silence. It is not an empty silence, but one full of presence. Escuchas the settling of the castle walls, the almost imperceptible creaking of the beams cooling, the wind softly brushing the high windows, unable to enter. You are protected by walls 2 meters thick, guarded by loyal soldiers, and sheltered by the hospitality of a noble house. You open your eyes and look again at the glow of the embers. The shifting shapes of the red light invite you to lose your gaze, to stop thinking. The mind empties of worries. There is no rush to go anywhere. The journey has been long, but this moment of pause is a gift. An elderly servant crosses the back of the hall, carrying a candle. His steps are shuffling and slow. He sees you sitting by the fire, but says nothing. He simply bows his head in a silent gesture of greeting and continues his way toward the kitchens, disappearing into the darkness like a kind shadow. His presence reinforces the feeling that everything is working as it should, that there are people taking care of every detail while the castle sleeps. You look back at the nearest dog. It has lazily opened one eye to look at you, recognizing that you are not a threat, and closes it again with a groan of satisfaction, settling its head better on its front paws. Its tranquility is contagious. You feel your own eyelids becoming heavy. The firelight seems to dim a bit more, becoming more intimate. The shadows in the corners of the great hall lengthen, but they are not fearsome shadows. They are like velvet blankets covering the furniture and corners, inviting rest. You realize that the fatigue you feel is good. It is the honest fatigue of having walked, of having observed, and of having reached a safe harbor. Here, in the banquet hall, among the tapestries that hold stories and the dogs that guard sleep, you find a perfect balance. You decide to stay a few more minutes, absorbing the heat emanating from the stone and the fire. Your breathing synchronizes with that of the sleeping hounds. The world outside, with its villages, its roads, and its stars, remains out there. But for now, your world is reduced to this circle of warm light and the promise of a night of restorative sleep. Everything is well. Everything is calm. Chapter 7. You accompany a solitary noble figure who observes the full moon from a high pointed arched window, enjoying a moment of private peace away from the obligations of the court.
Although the warmth of the embers in the great hall was comforting, a soft restlessness invites you to continue exploring the stillness of the fortress, seeking an even deeper silence. You leave behind the large sleeping dogs and the orange glow of the fireplace to head toward a spiral staircase, discreetly hidden in a corner of the room. The stone steps are worn by the passage of centuries, concave in the center, smoothed by the souls of generations of cards, servants, and nobles. As you begin the ascent, you feel the air change. The warmth of the ground floor slowly dissipates, replaced with a clean and crisp coolness, characteristic of the tower's heights. Your hands brush the ashlar wall as you climb.
The stone is rough and cold to the touch, conveying a sense of unshakable solidity. There are no torches in this section, only the faint moonlight filtering through narrow arrow slits, painting silver stripes across the dark steps. The only sound is the rustle of your own clothes and your steady breathing, marking a hypnotic rhythm that takes you further and further from the earthly world. Reaching the top of the stairs, you find yourself before a heavy oak door standing ajar. A golden, flickering light escapes from within, dancing over the flagstones of the hallway. With instinctive respect, you approach the threshold noiselessly, as if you were just another shadow of the castle. Inside the chamber, time seems to have stopped. It is a spacious yet intimate room, far from the bustle of the court and the demands of the day. The walls are covered with shelves filled with leather-bound volumes, parchment scrolls, and maps describing distant lands and ancient constellations. The air smells of beeswax, dried ink, and the sweet scent of aromatic herbs scattered on the floor to freshen the atmosphere. In the center of the room, a sturdy table supports the weight of several brass instruments that shine softly under the light of a candelabra. There are astrolabes, armillary spheres, and compasses, tools of someone seeking to understand the mysteries of the sky. But the figure inhabiting this room is not working now. Beside a high, pointed arch window, standing with his back to the room, is a man. He is a noble figure, wrapped in a dark velvet tunic that falls heavily to the floor, protecting him from the night chill. Although he wears no crown in this moment of intimacy, his posture emanates a natural authority, softened by fatigue and contemplation. It is Alfonso, the king they call the wise, the monarch who seeks in the stars the order that is sometimes lacking on earth. You stand still, observing the scene with the feeling of witnessing a sacred moment. The king does not move. He is completely absorbed, looking through the elegant stone ogive that frames the night sky. You approach a few steps, drawn by the same vision that captivates the monarch. From this height, the view is breathtaking. The open window allows the night breeze to enter softly, bringing with it the smell of damp earth and the cypresses of the lower gardens. Out there, the world sleeps under the mantle of a full moon, round and perfect, reigning sovereign in the firmament. Its light is so intense that it bathes the entire landscape in a bluish and milky tone. You can see the rooftops of the city stretching down the hill, a mosaic of tiles and stones that shine like silver scales. The chimneys of the houses no longer smoke. The streets are deserted and silent. Only the river, down there in the valley, continues its eternal march, reflecting the lunar disk in its dark waters like a liquid mirror. The king rests a hand on the stone sill of the window. It is a gesture of connection, of anchoring. In this instant, there are no decrees to sign, no border disputes to resolve, no laws to dictate. Up here, far from the whispers of advisors and the echo of armor, the king is just a man facing the immensity of the universe. You observe how his breathing synchronizes with the calm of the night. He seems to be listening to the music of the spheres, that silent harmony which, according to the books on his table, governs the movement of the planets. The tension in his shoulders dissolves. Solitude, which is often a burden for rulers, becomes a gift here, a necessary balm for the spirit. The moonlight illuminates his profile, revealing a serene face with his gaze lost in the constellations he has studied so much. Perhaps he is mentally tracing the position of Jupiter or Saturn, or simply enjoying the pure and unadorned beauty of creation. It is a moment of absolute peace, a silent truce between the weight of the crown and the freedom of thought. You also feel that peace, being there, accompanying that noble solitude. Your own worries seem insignificant, small specks of dust compared to the vastness of the starry sky. The stillness of the tower envelops you like a heavy, warm blanket. The silence is dense, but not empty. It is full of presence, of history, of the quiet certainty that the world keeps turning, orderly and secure. An owl hoots in the distance, a soft and melancholy sound that accentuates the depth of the night. The king sighs, but it is not a sigh of sadness, but of deep satisfaction. He removes his hand from the windowsill and adjusts his tunic, feeling the coolness of the approaching dawn slowly drawing near. However, he does not move away from the window. He remains there, static, like a silent guardian watching over the dreams of his people, or perhaps like a student who never tires of learning from the night. The atmosphere in the room is so relaxing that you feel your eyelids grow heavy. The candlelight has dimmed, and the shadows in the corners of the room have lengthened, soft and welcoming. The smell of old books and parchments feels strangely familiar and comforting to you, as if this place of study were a known refuge. You understand now why he has come up here. It is not just to see, but to feel. To remember that above the castles, the walls, and the kingdoms, there exists a higher order, a celestial calm that is always present, waiting to be observed. The figure of the king turns slightly, as if sensing a friendly presence, but there is no alarm in his gesture, only a quiet acceptance of company in the vigil. He looks back at the moon, sharing with you that moment of beauty suspended in time. Everything is well. The fortress is secure. The walls are high, and the sky is infinite. You allow yourself to rest in that certainty. The image of the wise king, silhouetted against the silver light of the full moon, is the last thing you keep in your mind as the feeling of sleep becomes deeper, sweeter, and more inevitable. Here, at the top of the tower, peace is absolute. Chapter 8. A troubadour tunes his lute in a dimly lit corner, and the soft, melancholy notes of an ancient ballad float through the air, inviting your mind to release any tension. Here is part 8 of your story, written in a relaxing and evocative tone designed to accompany sleep. Part 8. The Echo of Ancient Wood. The image of King Alfonso, silhouetted against the silver glow of the moon and surrounded by his celestial maps, fades softly in your memory, like a watercolor painting dissolving in clear water. The sense of security his presence in the high tower provided lingers, settled in the center of your chest like a warm anchor. Now you leave the monarch's study behind. Your steps are light, almost weightless, as you descend the spiral staircase. The stone of the walls, cooled by the night, exhales a mineral scent, ancient and solid. As you go down, the absolute silence of the tower gives way to the subtle sounds of the fortress at rest. It is not noise, but the deep breathing of a sleeping castle. Upon reaching the end of the stairs, you find yourself in a wide corridor. The torches on the walls have almost completely burned out, leaving barely any orange embers flickering timidly in their iron brackets. The light is dim, the color of amber and honey, creating a path of soft shadows that stretch and shrink with every sigh of the wind outside. You walk without haste. Your boots barely make a sound on the stone slabs polished by centuries of passage. Through a narrow window, you catch a glimpse of the inner court. Below, the world is calm. The water well, with its stone curb, rests under the starlight. A guard dozes, sitting on a wooden bench, his head resting against the wall, his spear lying harmlessly by his side. Everything is in order. Everything is at peace.
You continue forward until you reach the entrance of a side room, a more intimate space than the great banquet halls. It is a corner intended for rest, where thick wool tapestries cover the walls to hold in the heat. The air here is warmer, permeated with a sweet smell of beeswax and dry wood burning slowly in the fireplace. As you enter, your eyes adjust to the cozy dimness. The room is not empty, but the presence inhabiting it is so serene that it does not break your state of calm. On the contrary, it deepens it. In a corner, sitting on a low stool near the fire, is a man. He wears no armor or ostentatious silk garments. He wears a simple earth-colored linen tunic and a leather vest worn by use. He is a troubadour. His face, marked by the sun of the roads and the lines of many past smiles, is bowed down, concentrated on the object he cradles in his lap. His hands hold a short-necked lute, an instrument of singular beauty. The wood of the lute's body is dark, walnut perhaps, or rosewood brought from distant lands, and it shines softly under the reflection of the flames. You can see the mother-of-pearl inlays on the neck, capturing the little light in the room as if they were small moons trapped in the wood. You stop at the threshold, watching without wanting to interrupt. The troubadour does not seem to notice your presence, or if he does, he accepts it as a natural part of the night. He is tuning his instrument. It is a slow, ceremonial process. He turns one of the wooden pegs with extreme delicacy. Pling! A solitary note rises in the air, clear and round. The man tilts his head, listening to the fading of the sound, searching for the perfect vibration. He adjusts the peg 1 millimeter more. Pling! Now the note is pure. You watch him with quiet fascination. You think about how many roads that lute must have traveled. You imagine the troubadour walking along dusty paths under the Castilian sun, crossing stone bridges over rushing rivers, sleeping under the oaks in summer nights. That instrument has resonated in village squares full of peasants celebrating the harvest and in silent chapels where only the prayer of monks was heard. Now it is here, in the intimacy of the night, just for you and for the shadows dancing on the wall. The musician runs his calloused hands over the gut strings. A soft chord, a sigh of harmony fills the room. The sound is warm, with a deep resonance that seems to vibrate in your very bones, loosening any knot of tension that might remain in your shoulders. You approach and take a seat on a velvet-cushioned bench at a prudent distance. The troubadour looks up for a moment, offers you a slight smile that requires no words, and returns his attention to the strings. He begins to play. It is not a war song, nor a fast march. It is an ancient ballad, one of those melodies that seem to have no beginning or end, as if they had always been floating in the air, waiting for someone to bring them to earth. The notes flow liquidly, like the water of a stream descending a green hill. It is a melancholy music, but of a sweet, healing melancholy. It tells you of ancient times, of courtly loves, and of the simple beauty of daily life. You close your eyes for a moment, and the music transports you. You visualize wheat fields swaying in the golden afternoon wind. You see women gathering water in clay jars, laughing as the sun sets. You smell the freshly baked bread escaping from the houses of the village at the foot of the castle. The music of the lute weaves all these images into a tapestry of comforting sensations. The rhythm is slow. Tan, 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 tan. The troubadour's right hand moves with a hypnotic fluidity, his fingers plucking the strings with soft precision, while his left hand slides along the neck, changing notes without apparent effort. There is no abruptness, only a continuous flow of sound that envelops the room. The fire in the fireplace crackles softly, a percussive counterpoint to the melody of the lute. A log settles on the embers, releasing a small shower of sparks that rise up the chimney and disappear, joining the night outside. The heat of the fire caresses your face and hands, inviting you to release the weight of your body onto the seat. You feel your breathing fall into step with the rhythm of the ballad. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. The music acts as a balm. Each note seems to massage your mind, erasing complex thoughts, leaving only the pure sensation of the present moment. The troubadour begins to hum very low. He utters no words, only a deep and melodious murmur that accompanies the strings. It is a voice that reminiscent of old wood and aged wine. That human sound, devoid of language, connects directly with something deep inside you, a sense of belonging and ancestral calm. You realize there is nothing else to do. There is nowhere you need to go. The king rests in his tower, the guards watch the walls, the people sleep in their houses. The world is turning slowly under the stars, and you are here, safe, sheltered by stone walls and wrapped in music. The melody changes subtly, becoming even slower, more spaced out. The troubadour lets each note resonate until the end before playing the next. The silence between the notes becomes as important as the sound itself. It is in those spaces of silence where your mind finds its deepest rest. Your eyelids feel pleasantly heavy. The image of the room with its tapestries and the golden glow of the fire becomes blurry, soft at the edges. You let yourself be carried by the current of the music, floating in it like a leaf on a quiet river. The troubadour continues to play, tireless, guardian of your sleep. You know that as long as the music plays, everything will be fine. The ancient ballad tells you that the night is long and safe, that rest is a well-deserved gift. Little by little, the distinction between the music and your own thoughts fades. You no longer hear the melody from the outside. Now it resonates within you, marking the pulse of a peaceful sleep that approaches. The dimly lit corner, the smell of firewood, the glow of the lute, everything melts into a single sensation of absolute peace. And so, cradled by the notes that have survived the centuries, you surrender to serenity, letting the sound of the lute be the last bridge toward deep rest. Chapter 9. You descend to the castle kitchens, where the remaining heat from the large stone ovens and the smell of fresh yeast create a dense, warm, and deeply comforting atmosphere. Here is part 9 of the story, designed to induce calm and sleep.
Capítulo 17. You still hold beneath your eyelids the silvery glow of the stars you observed from the monastery tower. The sense of immensity and order that the royal astronomer shared with you has settled in your chest, becoming an anchor of serenity. Now, lying in the warmth of your bed, you feel your consciousness become light, gently detaching itself from the stone walls of the room to embark on a new journey, this time not upward but toward the horizon, following the invisible course of the night winds. Your mind glides out of the monastery, silently flying over the sleeping valleys. Below, the villages are barely clusters of geometric shadows where the smoke from the last chimneys mixes with the low mist of the farmlands. You pass over roads of compacted earth, those vital arteries through which carts loaded with hay and wool travel during the day, but which now rest under the moonlight, empty and quiet. As you move westward, the air changes. The dry freshness of the mountain and the smell of pine and damp earth give way to a different breeze, denser and laden with promise. It is an air that smells of salt, seaweed, and incalculable distances. You have reached the coast. The ocean opens before you with a liquid majesty. The ocean stretches out until it merges with the dark sky, a sheet of obsidian that breathes with a slow and eternal rhythm. Your attention descends gently toward a natural harbor, a bay protected by high limestone cliffs that cut the wind and create a refuge of calm waters. There, Anchored a few meters from the stone pier rests a large merchant ship. It is a robust vessel with a wide hull and dark wood, weathered by innumerable voyages. There is no frantic activity on its deck, no shouting of sailors, no noise of loading and unloading. At this hour of night, the ship simply exists, floating in almost absolute stillness. You imagine yourself descending until you land on the deck of this ship. You feel the wood beneath your feet, solid and damp from the night dew. The first thing you perceive is the sound. It is a rhythmic creaking, deep and comforting. The wood of the hull groans softly as it is pushed by the water, a sound that resembles the breathing of a large sleeping animal. The ship sways. It is a pendulous movement, slow and constant. The sea, though calm in the bay, is never entirely still. Small, dark waves gently strike the side of the ship, producing a liquid and relaxing slapping that lulls your senses. Clock, shh, clock, shh. The water caresses the wood, lifts it a few inches, and lets it fall again with infinite delicacy. You walk slowly across the deck, brushing your hand against the railing polished by use and saltpeter. The smell of pitch and tar, used to waterproof the hull, mixes with the aroma of residual spices permeating the holds, a distant hint of cloves, pepper, and exotic woods brought from lands that few have seen. At the bow of the ship, silhouetted against the reflection of the moon on the water, you distinguish a solitary figure. It is a man wrapped in a thick cloak of dark wool to protect himself from the sea dampness. He is not a simple sailor on watch. His posture denotes deep contemplation, a mixture of authority and insatiable curiosity. He is Prince Henry, known to some as the Navigator. Although his usual residence is in solitary Sagres, he often visits the ports to inspect the ships that turn his calculations and theories into reality. He is not here to give orders or to demand immediate results. He is here for the same reason as you, to feel the sea. The prince rests both hands on the gunwale of the ship and looks south toward the darkness of the ocean that swallows the horizon. His face, dimly lit by the moonlight, shows the lines of a man who has dedicated his life to deciphering the mysteries of the world. He thinks of the maps drawn on sheepskin parchments, of the coasts that do not yet have names, and of the currents that connect continents like invisible veins. You observe as he takes a small compass from his tunic. The needle oscillates slightly with the movement of the ship, always seeking the north with magnetic fidelity. He observes it, nods slightly, and puts it away. For him, this swaying is not just movement, it is the pulse of the planet, an invitation to go beyond the known. But tonight, there is no rush. Tonight, the mission is simply to be, to wait, and to trust the tide. You move respectfully away from his figure and sit on some rolls of hemp rope piled near the main mast. The ropes are rough to the touch, but firm. From here you look up. The mast rises like a bare tree, swaying slowly against the starry background. Each time the ship tilts to port, the mast traces an arc to the left. When it tilts to starboard, it sweeps the sky to the right. It is a hypnotic metronome marking the passage of time without urgency. Life in the port sleeps. In the distance, on the shore, you see the silhouette of a small fisherman's chapel, with a single candle lit in its window, a guiding light for those who have not yet returned. The houses of the coastal town are closed, their wooden shutters secured against the wind. Only the wind is heard whistling softly through the ship's rigging, making the ropes vibrate as if they were the strings of a giant lute played by the breeze. You feel your own breathing synchronize with the movement of the ship. You inhale when the bow rises subtly with an incoming wave. You exhale when it descends into the valley between the waters. The swaying is a perfect cradle. There are no jerks,
there is no danger. The anchor is firmly driven into the seabed, ensuring that despite the movement, you will go nowhere. You are safe. The dark water beneath the hull has an unfathomable depth, but instead of fear, it transmits a sense of support. The ocean holds this ship of tons of weight with the same ease that a hand holds a feather. You notice the buoyancy, that invisible force pushing upward, countering gravity, and allowing you to rest in a state of weightless suspension. Your mind travels into the hold for a moment. There, barrels of port wine and bales of Castilian wool rest in the darkness, protected and dry. Everything is stowed correctly. Everything is in its place, ready for when the time comes to set sail. But that time is not now. Now is the time of rest. You refocus on the physical sensation of the swaying. Left, right, up, down. The swaying eases the tension in your shoulders, your neck, your back. It is as if the sea were massaging your fatigue, dissolving it into the salty vastness. Prince Henry remains at the bow, a silent statue guarding the sleep of history, allowing you to retreat into your own rest. The image of the harbor becomes blurred, soft like a watercolor in the rain. The sound of the water hitting the wood becomes the only sound in your universe. You feel heavy, relaxed, sunken into the safety of this imaginary ship sailing through the seas of sleep. Little by little, you let the scene fade away, keeping only the sensation of the movement. The swaying persists in your body, a soft echo inviting you to close the eyes of your mind and let yourself be carried by the night's tranquil current. Everything is calm. Everything is silence and sea. The ship protects you, the anchor holds you, and the waves rock you toward a deep and shoreless sleep.
The absolute silence of the heights begins to be replaced by a distant murmur, almost imperceptible, like the hum of a sleeping beehive. You go down one flight, and then another. With every step that brings you closer to the castle's foundations, the temperature begins to rise. It is not a stifling heat, but a gradual, welcoming warmth that seems to embrace your shoulders. It is the breath of the building, the vital energy that keeps the daily life of the court moving. Upon reaching the end of the stairs, a massive stone arch opens before you. Even before crossing the threshold, the aroma welcomes you. It is a complex and wonderful scent, a mixture of burning wood, dried herbs hanging from the beams, and above all, the unmistakable and maternal aroma of freshly baked bread. You cross the arch and enter the castle's great kitchens. The space is immense, almost cavernous, with high ceilings that lost themselves in the gloom, blackened by the smoke of decades of banquets and everyday dinners. Despite its size, the room does not feel empty, it feels alive. The stone walls, thick and protective, retain the heat generated during the day, creating a perfect microclimate, isolated from the wind and the cold outside. Your eyes adjust to the soft light. There are no bright torches here, but rather the constant reddish glow of the embers in the gigantic stone ovens that dominate the back wall. They are imposing structures, like small houses within the Great Hall, built with fire brick and volcanic stone. Although the live fire has already lowered its intensity, the remaining heat is powerful and constant. You walk slowly over the terracotta tile floor. You feel the heat radiating from the ground toward the soles of your shoes, rising through your legs, relaxing any tension that might remain in your muscles. At this hour, the frenzy of preparing the main meal has passed. The kitchen is in a state of active rest. You observe long oak tables, so polished by use and constant cleaning that the wood feels smooth as silk. On one of them rests a wicker basket full of apples and pears, fruit from the nearby orchards surrounding the city of Toledo, waiting to be peeled or cooked. In a corner, you see rows of copper pots and iron cauldrons hanging neatly. The light from the embers reflects off the metal, creating orange glints that dance softly on the walls, like stars captured inside the earth. You approach the oven area. The air here is dense,
laden with suspended flower particles that shimmer against the light. It is a deeply comforting environment. It smells of fresh yeast, that earthy and sour aroma that promises growth and sustenance. A baker, an older man with a flowered apron, works at a side table with slow, meditative movements. He does not seem to be in a hurry. His hands sink into a large, elastic, and soft dough. You observe the hypnotic rhythm of his work. He stretches the dough, folds it over itself, and presses with the palm of his hand. Stretch, fold, press. The sound is rhythmic, a soft, muffled thud against the wood, followed by the whisper of flour being scattered. It is an ancient dance, a labor that has been repeated in the same way for centuries, connecting the present with all past generations who have depended on grain and fire. You do not need to speak to him. His concentration is absolute and serene, conveying a sense of peace to you. He knows that bread needs time, that yeast requires patience and heat to work its magic. You sit on a sturdy wooden bench near the heat of the ovens, but at a prudent distance. You lean your back against the stone wall, which is warm to the touch here. It is like leaning against the side of a large sleeping animal. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing your other senses to take control. You hear the occasional crackle of a log breaking at the back of the oven, releasing a shower of sparks that you do not see but imagine. You hear the soft bubbling of a large pot of broth resting on the embers, cooking over a very low heat for the next day. The sound of the thick, hot liquid is like a lullaby, constant and secure. The smell of yeast and firewood envelop you completely. It is an aroma that evokes safety, home, and abundance. It makes you feel that no matter what happens outside these walls, here inside, in the belly of the castle, there will always be warmth and sustenance. The worries of the outside world, the intrigues of the court, or the changing weather have no place here. Here, only the essential exists: fire, water, flour, and time. You open your eyes and watch as the baker covers the dough with a clean linen cloth and leaves it to rest in a warm place. His task is finished for now. He wipes his hands and sits on a stool on the other side of the room, watching the same fire that you watch. The atmosphere is dense, almost liquid in its warmth.
You feel your eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from a deep relaxation born of feeling completely safe. The heat from the stone ovens acts like an invisible blanket, heavy and soft, settling over you. You look toward the high windows located near the ceiling. The sky outside must be darkening, giving way to the night. But here inside, time seems to have stopped in an eternal sunset of embers and copper. You stand up slowly, grateful for this refuge. You decide it is time to find a definitive place to rest, carrying this sense of internal warmth with you. You walk toward a side door that leads to the quieter servants' quarters, away from the noise, following the trail of heat that filters through the corridors. Your steps are silent on the stone. As you move away from the ovens, the intense smell of bread softens, becoming a subtle fragrance that accompanies you. The reddish light of the embers is left behind, but its memory remains alive on your skin. You reach a small corridor, barely lit by a beeswax candle flickering on a shelf. The flame is small, calm, and casts soft shadows that sway peacefully. The entire castle seems to be entering a state of deep sleep. The stones, the furniture, the air itself, everything breathes slowly. You feel anchored, present, and at peace. The visit to the kitchens has connected you with the earth and with simple life. There is no rush in your walk. You know the night will be quiet, protected by the stone walls, and nourished by the heat rising from below. You stop for a moment at the end of the hallway, resting your hand on the frame of a wooden door. The wood is old and smooth. You take one last deep breath, filling your lungs with that warm, comforting air. Everything is fine. Everything is calm. The night awaits you with its promise of absolute rest. Chapter 10. You go up to the tower to accompany the night watchman, whose calm gaze watches the starry horizon and the dark fields, ensuring that nothing disturbs your sleep. Here is part 10 of the story, written following your instructions for tone, style, and content. Part 10. You leave behind the comforting warmth of the kitchens, carrying with you the memory of the yeast aroma and the hypnotic image of the fire dancing in the ovens. Your body retains that warmth, like an invisible shield against the cooler air that inhabits the stone corridors. Now, your instinct guides you upward.
You feel the need to see the world from above, to confirm that the peace reigning inside the castle extends also toward the infinite horizon. Your steps echo softly on the granite slabs worn by centuries. You find the spiral staircase that ascends toward the keep. It is a stone spiral, narrow and solid, designed to protect, but tonight it feels simply like a path to the stars. As you climb, the air changes. It becomes cleaner, sharper. It smells of the night breeze, of damp rock, and the immensity of the sky. Your hand brushes the curved wall as you ascend, feeling the rough texture of the masonry, cold and firm under your fingers. There is no rush in your ascent. Each step is a pause, a moment to breathe, and let the pleasant heaviness of sleep begin to settle in your legs. Upon reaching the end of the stairs, you push a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron. It opens without creaking, well-oiled, revealing the upper platform of the tower. The world opens before you. You are at the highest point of the fortress. The night sky unfolds like an immense dome of dark velvet, dotted with thousands of stars that shine with a clarity that only exists far from the lights of the modern city. Here, in the stillness of the medieval era, the darkness is not empty, but deep and welcoming. You walk toward the battlements. There, standing by the stone edge, is the motionless silhouette of the night watchman. He does not startle at the sight of you. He is a robust figure, wrapped in a thick gray wool cloak that protects him from the night chill. His posture is relaxed but attentive. He is the lookout, the custodian of the sleep of all those resting under the slate and thatch roofs. He turns slowly toward you and offers a silent nod, a welcome that needs no words. His face is weathered by the sun and wind, with a grizzled beard denoting experience and calm. His eyes, accustomed to reading shadows, convey absolute security. There are no drawn weapons or tension in his shoulders. He only holds an iron lantern with a tallow candle inside, its flame protected by translucent horn panels, emitting a soft, constant amber glow. You stand beside him, resting your arms on the cold stone of the battlement. Both of you look outward. The landscape stretching beneath the tower is a tapestry of shadows and silver. The moon, in its first quarter, bathes the farmland in a milky, pale light. You can see the furrows of the plowed earth, resting in silence, waiting for the morning sun.
Beyond, the dark line of an ancient forest marks the limit of the valley, its crowns swayed by a breeze that barely whispers. In the distance, the shapes of a small village can be discerned. There are no lights in the windows. The people sleep, trusting in the protection provided by the castle. Only the outline of the Romanesque church is visible, solid and eternal, its bell tower silhouetted against the starry sky. You imagine the villagers in their beds of straw and wool blankets, breathing in unison with the night. The guard points subtly toward the sky. You follow his gaze. The constellations are maps of light that have guided travelers and kings for generations. You think of figures like Alfonso X, the wise king, who perhaps on a night like this, from a similar tower in the lands of Castile, observed these same stars to compile his tables.
Our society advances without any control, without us realizing it. But are we on the path to progress, or are we destroying ourselves? In this story, you will have a general overview of what it was like to live in medieval times, and at the end, you will tell me if you would have survived with your current abilities. Welcome to a new adventure. Chapter 1. You step onto a path of packed earth as the sun tints the stone walls of an ancient citadel amber, marking the beginning of rest and disconnection from the modern world. Part 1. You find yourself standing at the beginning of a path of packed earth. Under your boots, the ground feels firm and ancient, a mixture of compacted dust and small stones that have been polished by the passage of centuries. The air here is different. It is fresher, cleaner, and brings with it the scent of damp grass and pine wood descending from the nearby mountains. In front of you, the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, a golden disk that seems to melt into the earth, tinting the high stone walls of an ancient citadel a deep amber. It is the exact moment when the day decides to give way to the night. There is no rush. Here, time is not measured in seconds or minutes, but in the length of the shadows that stretch gently over the fields. You leave behind the noise, the artificial lights, and the demands of the modern world. All of that remains behind you, fading like a distant mist as you take the first step into this medieval landscape that seems to have been waiting for you. You move forward slowly. The path meanders gently, moving away from the defensive walls that in other times protected the inhabitants of the valleys. You observe the texture of those stones, their irregular blocks of granite and limestone, now covered by a mantle of dry green moss, silent witnesses to history. The evening light highlights every crack and every contour, giving the fortress a warm and welcoming appearance, very different from its original military purpose. Now it is only a guardian of silence. As you walk, you imagine what it was like here 1,000 years ago.
Chapter 16. You visit the tower of a royal astronomer who traces imaginary lines between bright constellations, observing a pure medieval sky free from any artificial light. Here is part 16 of the story, written following your directions for tone, style, and content. Part 1. Although the calm of your room invited sleep, a serene curiosity has kept you awake, a subtle feeling that the night still holds one last secret for you. You rise from the bed with haste, covering yourself with a thick wool cloak to protect yourself from the night chill. As you open the heavy wooden door, the fresh air of the corridor greets you, bringing with it the scent of damp stone and ancient wax. You walk through the corridors in silence. Your steps barely resonate on the flagstones worn by centuries of sandals and boots. The monastery sleeps. No voices are heard, nor the bustle of servants, nor the chanting of the monks that recently filled the chapel. Only the gentle wind, whistling through the narrow loophole windows, accompanies your walk. You follow a path that leads you toward the east wing, where the architecture becomes more robust, more ancient. There stands the highest tower of the complex, a square structure that seems to want to touch the firmament. You know that this place does not belong to common monastic life. It is the domain of the royal astronomer, a wise old man who serves the court and who has found in this retreat the perfect place to dialogue with the heavens. Reaching the base of the tower, you find a spiral staircase. The stone here is cold to the touch, solid and eternal. You begin the ascent. Turning and climbing, you feel as though you are leaving the earthly world behind, the world of sown fields, of sleeping villages, and the dirt roads you have traveled for days. With every step, you draw closer to the immense vault that covers the world. Part 2. The climb is steady and rhythmic. Your breathing keeps pace with the circular movement of the stairs. Finally, you reach a stone arch without a door, opening into a circular room at the top of the tower. The place is in twilight, lit only by the dying ember of an iron brazier that provides a timid but comforting warmth. There he is, the astronomer. He is a man with a gray beard and a deep gaze, dressed in dark robes that blend with the shadows of the room. He does not startle at the sight of you. He seems to have been expecting your arrival, or perhaps in his immense concentration, your presence is just one more note in the harmony of the night. The room is a treasure trove of medieval science. Upon sturdy oak tables rest brass instruments that gleam faintly in the starlight. You see an astrolabe, its discs engraved with mathematical precision, designed to calculate the position of the sun and the stars. There are armillary spheres, metal skeletons that mimic the dance of the planets, and rolls of parchment spread out, filled with celestial maps and calculations in sepia ink. The astronomer makes a gentle gesture with his hand, inviting you to approach the large open window, a wide arch without glass or shutters that lets the night in all its majesty. He does not speak. He does not break the sacred silence of observation. He simply shares his sanctuary with you. You step closer and, looking out, your breath catches for a moment at the pure beauty unfolding before your eyes. Part 3. It is a sky that the modern world has forgotten. A medieval sky, virgin, free from any artificial light. Below, in the valley, the darkness is absolute. There are no streetlights, no glows from distant cities. One can only guess far in the distance the tiny, flickering red of a solitary bonfire from some shepherd watching his flock, or perhaps the candlelight from a distant farmhouse. Everything else is a cloak of black velvet, covering forests, rivers, and castles. But above, the spectacle is overwhelming. Thousands, millions of stars pierce the darkness with a brilliance that seems to vibrate. They are not static points. They are living jewels, some white as diamonds, others blue as ice, and some with an orange hue, warm and ancient. The Milky Way is not a fuzzy blur, but a river of thickened light, a backbone of stellar clouds crossing the firmament from horizon to horizon. Here, in this era, they call it the Way of St. James. The pilgrims now sleeping in the hostels along the path, leagues away, use the same river of stars to guide themselves westward, toward Compostela. You feel a deep connection with those invisible travelers, all united under the same celestial roof. The air in the tower is cold, clean, and sharp. It fills your lungs with a purity that only exists in the heights. The astronomer adjusts the position of a long tube of wood and leather, a primitive ancestor of the telescope. Though he trusts more in his own eyes and in the mathematics inherited from the sages of Toledo and the court of Alfonso X, the wise king, who ordered the cataloging of each of these lights to understand the destiny of kingdoms.
Astronomical. The connection with history feels alive. You are sharing the same celestial vault that inspired sages and poets centuries ago. The silence up here is absolute, but it is not empty. It is filled with the protective presence of the watchman. He knows every sound of the night, the distant hooting of an owl, the murmur of the river winding through the valley, the creaking of wood as it cools. None of this alarms him. His tranquility is contagious. You understand that his job is not to fight, but to observe. His gaze is a beacon of peace that sweeps the horizon, ensuring that the world keeps turning in order while you rest. The night wind caresses your face, fresh and revitalizing, but your body remains wrapped in the memory of the oven's heat. The combination is perfect. The mind cleared by the pure air, the body heavy and relaxed. You watch as the guard adjusts his cloak and looks back toward the royal road, that ribbon of pale earth that disappears into the distance. It is the road traveled by merchants and pilgrims during the day, but which now rests empty and quiet. You know that if anyone approached, they would be seen long before reaching the gates. That certainty allows you to let go of any trace of worry that might remain. The watchman turns toward you once more. In his eyes, you see the promise of the guard. I watch so that you may sleep. It is an ancient, sacred pact. He will remain here, immovable as a gargoyle, patient as stone, counting the stars until the sky begins to clear with the dawn. You feel small under the immensity of the cosmos, but at the same time, deeply secure. There is nothing out there but nature sleeping. The fields, the river, the forest, and the village are on pause, suspended in time. The guard turns his gaze forward, resuming his serene contemplation. His breathing is slow, rhythmic, almost in step with the twinkling of the stars. You realize it is time to leave him to his task. He enjoys this solitude, this communion with the night. And you have received what you came looking for, the guarantee of absolute security. You step away from the edge of the battlement with slow movements. The stone beneath your hands feels solid, unbreakable. You take one last look at the horizon, keeping in your mind the image of the silvery fields and the peace that emanates from the sleeping earth. You walk back toward the tower door. Before crossing the threshold, you look back. The guard is still there, a dark silhouette silhouetted against the universe, the lantern at his feet casting a circle of warm light on the ground. He is the guardian of calm, the sentinel of silence. You close the door softly behind you, leaving the wind and the stars outside. Back on the spiral staircase, the silence of the castle envelops you like a blanket. Now, with the certainty that watchful eyes guard your sleep from above, you feel your eyelids grow deliciously heavy. You are safe. You are protected. All is right with the world, and the night is yours to rest. Capítulo 11. The narrative moves gently toward a nearby monastery, crossing a stone bridge over a river that whispers secrets as it passes and reflects the silvery light of the moon. Here is part 11 of the story, written following your instructions and maintaining the relaxing and descriptive tone. Parte 11. El puente de plata y el jardín de la abadesa. You silently bid farewell to the watchman in the tower, leaving behind the safety of the high stone and the infinite view of the stars. Your steps, now lighter, begin the descent down the spiral staircase. As you go down, the air becomes a little denser, laden with the scent of damp earth and the old wood emanating from the castle beams. There is no rush in your walk. Each step is a soft note in the melody of the night, a reminder that time in this place is measured by the slow turning of the constellations and not by the urgency of the hours. Upon exiting into the main courtyard, the castle sleeps. The torches are now faint embers, flickering with an orange glow, casting long, gentle shadows over the cobblestones. You cross the threshold of the great gate, which has been left ajar like an invitation to the outside world, and your boots touch the dirt path that winds toward the valley. The transition is smooth. You leave behind the defensive architecture, the walls that protect the sleep of kings, to enter the architecture of nature. The path descends gently, bordered by centuries-old oaks whose branches form a natural tunnel. The moonlight filters through the leaves, creating a mosaic of silver and shadow on the ground, a hypnotic pattern that guides your steps toward the sound of water. As you move forward, the whisper becomes a constant presence. It is the river, an artery of life that crosses the valley, flowing with a reassuring constancy. Soon the path opens, and a stone bridge appears before you. It is an ancient, solid construction with a Romanesque arch which has seen centuries of travelers, pilgrims, and merchants pass by. The stone of the bridge is cold to the touch and covered in a soft moss that glows under the moonlight. You stop in the center of the bridge. You rest your hands on the worn parapet and look down. The river is not just water tonight, it is a mirror of obsidian and silver. The current flows without turbulence, smooth and continuous, carrying the secrets of the mountain toward the sea. The sound of the water gently hitting the stone pillars is a deep lullaby, a white noise that quiets any remaining thoughts in your mind. On the other side of the river, the silhouette of a monastery rises against the dark blue sky. It is not a fortress like the castle you have left behind, but a refuge for the spirit. Its walls are lower, embraced by rows of vineyards and herb gardens that exhale their fragrances into the night coolness.
You can smell lavender, sage, and rosemary, mixed with sweet scent of incense that sometimes escapes from the chapel. You approach the monastery walls, walking along the riverbank. The peace here is different. It is a cultivated, silent, and deep peace. Through a small wrought iron gate that gives access to the outer gardens, you observe a scene that seems frozen in time. There, under the light of the full moon, a figure walks slowly among the parterres of medicinal plants. She wears the simple habit of her order, but her presence radiates a serene authority and ancient wisdom. It is Hildegard von Bingen, the visionary abbess, known throughout the lands for her knowledge of stones, plants, and the music of the heavens. She does not see you, or perhaps she simply accepts your presence as part of the night. You watch her move with delicacy. Her hands, expert and careful, touch the leaves of a fennel plant, checking its growth under the night dew. Hildegard seems to be in communion with the life surrounding her. There are no books in her hands now, only the direct reading of nature. She stops for a moment and looks up at the moon, her profile illuminated by the silvery glow. She seems to listen to a music that only she can hear, that celestial harmony of which she has written so much, an invisible symphony that connects the soul with the cosmos. Seeing her there, so connected to the earth and the sky, conveys a sense of perfect balance. She is the living image of dedication and calm. She leans slightly down to pick a small white flower. Her movements are slow, deliberate, devoid of any tension. It is a reminder that care and attention are forms of prayer, and that the night is a time to heal and restore. You respectfully move away, leaving the abbess in her garden of silence. You continue your way along the monastery wall, feeling that you take a part of that wisdom with you. The path is now flat and smooth, a ribbon of packed earth that follows the course of the river.
The sound of the water accompanies you, faithful and constant. You look toward the horizon and see how the mist begins to rise over the meadows, a soft white blanket that covers the grass and softens the contours of the world. Everything becomes blurred, gentle and dreamlike. The solidity of the stone bridge, the fragrance of the medicinal herbs, and the image of Hildegard under the moon melt into a warm sensation in your chest. Your eyelids feel pleasantly heavy. The rhythm of your steps synchronizes with the flow of the river. There is nothing else to do, no place you must reach with urgency. You are on a safe journey, protected by history, by stone, and by nature itself. The night breeze caresses your face, fresh and clean, taking away any trace of fatigue and leaving you only with the pure sensation of existing in this moment of absolute calm. The medieval world sleeps around you, the distant villages with their chimneys extinguished, the livestock resting in the stables, and the monks in their cells, all under the same starry mantle. You feel part of this great universal rest. The tranquility of the monastery has seeped into your bones. You stop for a moment beside an old willow tree that bows its branches toward the river as if it too were sleeping. You mentally lean against its imaginary trunk, feeling the firm support of the earth. Everything is silence, save for the whisper of the water and the soft beat of your own heart, which now beats slow and calm, ready to let itself be carried away by the current of deep and restorative sleep. Chapter 12. In the cloister garden, you imagine an abbess selecting aromatic herbs under the starlight, with the relaxing scent of lavender and sage filling the cool night air. Part 12. The knight advances with a slow and majestic pace, covering the known world with its dark velvet mantle. You find yourself now on the other side of the stone bridge, having left behind the constant flow of the river.
Enter the sacred silence that surrounds the monastery walls. The structure rises before you, solid and protective, a fortress of peace in the midst of the vast medieval geography. There are no armed guards here, nor sounds of clashing metal, only the stillness of the ancient stone that has absorbed centuries of prayers and whispers. You walk slowly, feeling the soft gravel under your feet until you reach a side entrance, a discreet archway that invites you into the heart of the enclosure, the cloister garden. Upon crossing the threshold, the change in atmosphere is immediate. The air here seems suspended in time, protected from the winds that sweep through the open valleys. You are in a hortus conclusus, an enclosed garden designed to be a mirror of paradise on earth, a place where nature is ordered in geometric harmony under the gaze of heaven. The cloister is a perfect square, surrounded by a gallery of double columns. The light of the full moon filters through the arches, casting long rhythmic shadows across the worn tile floor. In the center of the garden, a water fountain barely murmurs, a sound so soft it blends with your own breathing, marking the quiet pulse of the night. It is here, among the bedflowers carefully bordered by river stones, where your gaze rests once again upon the figure of the abbess. You do not need to see her face to recognize the dignity in her posture. She moves with a grace granted only by years of contemplative life, gliding among the plants as if floating slightly above the damp earth. You imagine her in her sacred labor, a task she performs in the solitude of the night when the properties of the plants are at their peak, concentrated by the coolness and the influence of the stars. It is not a simple gathering, it is a ritual of connection with the living earth. You approach mentally, without disturbing her space, and observe her hands. They are wise hands, accustomed to work and writing, hands that know the texture of every leaf and the resistance of every stem. You see her stop in front of a dense, silvery bush under the moonlight. It is sage, the plant the ancients called the Savior. With a delicate movement, the abbess brushes the velvety leaves. In the silence of the night, the aroma is released instantly, reaching you like an invisible wave. It is an earthy, deep, and camphoraceous scent, an aroma that clears the mind and purifies the air. You can feel that scent entering your lungs, cleansing any trace of worry, anchoring you in the present moment, in the safety of this walled garden. She continues her way along the paths of compacted earth. Her dark habit blends with the shadows of the hedges, making her seem like an extension of the garden itself. She stops now in front of some tall spikes that sway gently, though there is barely a breeze. It is lavender. Upon cutting a few branches, the air is flooded with a clean floral sweetness. The fragrance of lavender is an immediate balm for the senses. It is the scent of rest, of clean clothes stored in wooden chests, of domestic tranquility and the healing of the soul. You imagine that as you inhale this perfume, your shoulders relax completely, releasing any tension accumulated during the journey. The scene is of a pictorial beauty. The starlight, sharp and bright in the clear sky, illuminates the dew crystals beginning to form on the leaves. Each drop looks like a small jewel, a universe contained in pure water. The abbess looks up for a moment toward the firmament, connecting the viriditas, that green and vital force of the plants, with the immensity of the cosmos. For her, and now for you, there is no separation between the earth you walk upon and the sky you observe. Everything is part of the same unified and serene creation. You observe other corners of the garden. There are rows of mint that promise freshness and clumps of rosemary that evoke memory and strength.
There are also more discreet medicinal plants, those that cure fevers and relieve pains, growing silent under the watch of the monastery tower. You know that in this place, illness and discomfort have no room, for nature offers its remedies with generosity. The abbess places the gathered herbs in a wicker basket she carries on her arm. The rustle of the dry branches against the woven wood is a crisp and homely sound. She is in no hurry. The night is long, and the monastery sleeps. Her presence transmits a maternal security, the certainty that someone watches over the well-being of the world while others rest. You feel invited to sit on one of the stone benches attached to the cloister wall. The stone is cold, but it is a pleasant, solid cold that connects you with the history of the place. From here, the perspective of the garden is perfect. The straight lines of the paths converge at the central fountain, and above the slate roofs, the Milky Way unfolds like a river of white light. The combined aroma of sage, lavender, thyme, and damp earth creates a soporific and comforting atmosphere. It is an ancient perfume, the same one breathed by generations of monks, pilgrims, and travelers who sought refuge behind these walls. You feel part of that human chain, one more traveler who has found a safe harbor. The abbess turns slowly and seems for an instant to bless the garden with a slight nod of her head, thanking the earth for its gifts. Then she heads toward a sturdy wooden door at the other end of the cloister, disappearing silently into the gloom of the interior corridors, taking with her the basket of herbs that tomorrow will become ointments and healing teas. You are left alone in the garden, but you do not feel loneliness. The presence of nature is a full company. The murmur of the fountain seems to have become even softer, like a constant liquid lullaby. The shadows of the columns have moved imperceptibly, marking the passage of hours on this nocturnal clock. You breathe deeply once more. The cool night air fills your chest, bringing with it the peace of the distant mountains and the stillness of the valley. Your eyelids feel heavy, pleasantly heavy. The image of the abbess gathering herbs under the stars is etched in your mind as a symbol of order and serenity. Here in the cloister garden, the outside world with its long roads and high castles seems very far away. Only this moment of absolute calm exists, surrounded by the scent of healing herbs and the silvery light of the moon. Everything is in balance. The plants grow, the stars turn, and you are safe, enveloped in the fragrance of the medieval night, ready to let yourself be carried away by the quiet current of rest. The serenity of the place penetrates your thoughts, stilling them, leaving them as smooth and calm as the surface of the water in the stone fountain. Chapter 13. You enter the scriptorium, where the only sound is the hypnotic and rhythmic scratching of the quill on the parchment, as a monk preserves knowledge by candlelight. You leave behind the fresh and earthy scent of the cloister garden, allowing the night breeze to caress your face one last time before stepping back into the protection of the stone walls. The serenity you found among the medicinal herbs and the figure of the abbess accompanies you, like an invisible mantle resting on your shoulders, relaxing every muscle in your body as you walk. Your steps echo softly on the stone slabs worn by centuries of monastic sandals. The air in here is cooler, still, and silent. You move down a side corridor,
guided by a dim, warm light escaping through the crack of a heavy oak door at the end of the hallway. You know, without needing to ask, that you are heading to the intellectual heart of this sanctuary, the scriptorium. You push the door gently. The hinges, well-oiled, turn without emitting any creak, allowing you to enter a completely different atmosphere. The air in this room is dry and possesses an unmistakable and comforting smell. It smells of old leather, melted beeswax, chalk dust, and the metallic, iron scent of freshly mixed black ink. It is the scent of history being preserved. The room is vast, with high ceilings lost in the shadows, supported by dark and sturdy wooden beams. Although there are many work tables arranged in orderly rows, slanted to facilitate writing, at this late hour most are empty. The stools are tucked away, and the lecterns rest under the shadow of the night. However, in a corner protected from drafts, a single island of light defies the darkness. You approach slowly, enveloped in the respect the place commands. There, sitting with a posture of absolute concentration, is a monk. He is not an old man, but not young either. His hands reveal the experience of years dedicated to the art of calligraphy. He wears the Benedictine habit of dark and coarse wool, which falls in heavy folds around his stool. The only sound in the immense hall is hypnotic, rhythmic, and deeply the scratching of the quill on the parchment. Scritch, scratch, scritch. It is a constant sound, like a heartbeat or the dripping of rain, marking the passage of time in seconds of creation. You stop at a prudent distance to observe his labor. The light comes from two thick tallow candles whose steady golden flame illuminates the small universe of the desk. The light makes soft shadows dance across the rough surface of the parchment, a vellum skin treated with pumice stone until it is smooth as silk and pale as the moon. The monk dips the tip of his goose quill into a horn inkwell embedded in the table. He does so with a fluid movement, almost a dance rehearsed 1,000 times. He wipes the excess ink on the rim and returns to the paper. His hand does not tremble. It moves with deliberate precision, tracing the curves and straight lines of the Carolingian script, that round, clear, and legible writing that the great Alcuin of York promoted to unify the knowledge of the empire. Each letter is a small work of architecture, built with patience and devotion. You observe how the black ink, shiny and wet, settles onto the fiber of the parchment. The monk is copying an ancient text. From the arrangement of the words and the solemnity of the format, you sense it could be a work by Saint Bede the Venerable, preserving the history of the people and the faith of these islands for generations yet unborn. There is no rush in his movements. In this place, time is not measured in hours, but in lines completed, in pages turned. Medieval daily life, with its harvests, its noisy markets, and the passage of nights along muddy roads, seems very far away here. In the scriptorium, only the eternal present of the written word exists. Beside the scribe's hand, you see a small knife, the cultellum, which he uses sporadically to hold the page or gently scrape away some tiny imperfection from the skin. There are also ground-colored stones, lapis lazuli blue, brought from remote lands beyond the sea, intense vermilion red, and a touch of gold leaf waiting to be applied to the initial letter. The monk pauses. He looks up for an instant, not at you, but toward the darkness in front of him, as if searching for the perfect phrase in his mind before transcribing it. His face is calm, his eyes reflecting the small flame of the candle. He exhales slowly, and in that sigh, any tension of the day is released. He is a man at peace with his purpose.
He returns to his task. The sound returns. The scratching of the quill is a lullaby for your senses. You imagine the texture of the paper under your own fingers, the warmth of the candle in your cold hands, the protective silence of the stone walls. Everything here is designed for introspection and calm. You look around the room once more. The shelves covering the walls are filled with volumes bound in leather and wood, with bronze clasps that gleam dimly in the gloom. There sleep the words of Greek philosophers, Roman poets, and holy fathers, all living together in fraternal silence. You feel a deep security in knowing that while the outside world changes and turns, this place remains constant, an anchor of wisdom in a sea of uncertainty. The light from the monk's candle flickers slightly, casting an elongated shadow that stretches across the stone floor. The scribe dips his pen once more. The smell of oak gall and iron ink reaches you, an earthy and acidic aroma that is strangely pleasant. You feel heavy, but in a sweet way. The repetition of the monk's movements, the stillness of the library, and the atmosphere of silent study have completely quieted your mind. There are no worries here, only the slow and meticulous march of the pen advancing line by line. You decide to let the brother continue with his sacred task. You do not want to disturb the sanctity of his concentration. You take a step back,
moving away from the island of light, receding into the soft shadows of the hallway. As you cross the threshold again and close the door behind you, the sound of the scratching fades until it becomes an echo in your memory, but the sense of peace remains intact. The hallway is darker now, but your eyes have grown accustomed to it. At the end of the corridor, a stone staircase ascends toward the dormitories, where final rest awaits you. You feel part of this uninterrupted chain of calm and continuity. With your spirit soothed by the vision of knowledge preserved by candlelight, you move slowly toward the stairs, ready to leave the day behind and surrender to sleep. Everything is in order. Everything is in silence. Chapter 14. You stop in the monastic library, surrounded by ancient volumes of leather and wood, feeling the absolute stillness of centuries of wisdom resting on the dark shelves. Here is part 14 of the story, designed to induce sleep and relaxation. Part 1. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone slabs of the hallway, a rhythmic echo that accompanies you as you leave the scriptorium behind. Although your final destination is the dormitories and the promised rest, an invisible and gentle force invites you to stop. Before you stands a solid oak door, darkened by the passage of centuries and reinforced with black iron fittings that look like roots climbing through the wood. It is the entrance to the monastic library, the silent heart of the abbey. You push the door gently. The hinges, well oiled, turn without so much as a whisper, allowing you passage into a sanctuary of shadow and knowledge. The air here is different from the rest of the monastery. It is a still air, cool and dry, permeated with a complex and comforting aroma. It smells of cured leather, ancient parchment, beeswax, and the cedar wood of the shelves. You stop at the threshold, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light.
The sun has already descended enough that the interior is bathed in long, welcoming shadows, barely broken by the amber light of a few candles burning in bronze candelabras strategically distributed.
Around you, the walls disappear behind endless rows of shelves. They are not mere furniture, but guardians of history. The volumes rest there, some so large they require both hands to be moved, bound in dark hides with metal corners that gleam faintly. You feel an instinctive reverence, a sense of smallness before the immensity of time accumulated within these four walls. Here, the outside world, with its dusty roads and noisy markets, seems like a distant dream. Only the stillness exists, dense and protective, wrapping around you like a heavy blanket. You move slowly down the central aisle, sliding your hand over the slanted reading desks. The wood is polished by the rubbing of thousands of habit sleeves over generations. You observe how some of the most valuable books are fastened to the desks with fine iron chains, the libri catenati, ensuring that wisdom always remains within reach of those who seek it, yet secure in its home. You approach one of the narrow windows, a Romanesque arch that offers a privileged view of the valley. From this height, medieval life unfolds in a tableau of twilight serenity. Below, beyond the orchard walls, the village prepares for the night. You see the thatched and wooden roofs, from which wisps of gray smoke escape, rising lazily toward the sky, a sign that homes are lighting their fires for dinner. The landscape is a patchwork quilt of dark greens and browns. The dirt roads, which during the day saw the passage of carts and merchants, are now deserted, save for a solitary figure returning home with a slow pace. In the distance, the silhouette of a castle is outlined against the violet horizon, its towers firm and stoic, watching over the land.
The evening wind gently moves the treetops in the nearby forest, and although the window glass separates you from the outside, you can imagine the sound of leaves whispering secrets to the wind. It is a world in order, where every element, from the peasant to the noble, from the stone to the star, has its place and its moment of rest. You turn away from the window, and your attention returns to the books. Your fingers brush the spine of a particularly thick volume. Upon opening it, the creak of the parchment sounds like a welcome. The pages are not of fragile paper, but of sturdy vellum, soft to the touch, with a creamy texture that has survived entire empires. At one of the nearby tables, you imagine the ethereal presence of those who walked these halls before you. You think of figures like Alcuin of York. Although he is not physically here, his legacy breathes in the organization of this place. You remember the stories of how, from the court of Charlemagne, Alcuin promoted the correction of texts and the creation of libraries like this one, beacons of light in uncertain times. It is easy to imagine a man like him in a simple tunic, leaning over a text, not with the urgency of the scribe who copies, but with the calm of the scholar who understands. The Carolingian script, clear and rounded, which you see on the open page before you, is a gift from that era. It is a writing designed to be read with clarity, to bring order to chaos, to facilitate the transmission of the human voice through the centuries. The presence of these historical figures is not academic or distant. It feels close, human. They are silent companions on your nightly journey. You feel gratitude toward those anonymous and known hands that prepared the ink, tanned the skin, and traced the guidelines, allowing this moment of peace to be possible for you here and now. Part 4.
The light from a nearby candle flickers slightly, making shadows dance over the illuminated text. You lean in to observe a detail in the margin of the page. It is an initial letter, a capital Q, decorated with astonishing detail. The artist used gold leaf, which even in this meager light
captures a warm and brilliant glint. Around the letter, vines of lapis lazuli blue and cinnabar red intertwine, creating a small labyrinth of beauty. You do not need to read the Latin to understand the book's message. The beauty of the page speaks to you of patience. Someone spent weeks, perhaps months, on this single sheet alone. That absolute dedication, that lack of haste is transmitted to you. Your breathing falls into step with the slow rhythm of that ancient artist. There is no need to rush. Time in the library is not measured in minutes or hours, but in the depth of thought and the stillness of the spirit. You turn the page delicately. The sound is soft, dry, satisfying. You find a map, a representation of the known world drawn in sepia ink. It shows distant lands, oceans populated by fantastic creatures that inspire not fear but curiosity, and stars that guide navigators. It is a reminder that the world is vast and wonderful, but that you are safe, anchored in this harbor of silence and wood. The temperature in the room is perfect, neither cold nor hot, an atmosphere preserved to protect the books, which in turn protects you. You feel enveloped by wisdom, not as a burden, but as a support. The shelves surround you like the walls of a gentle fortress, keeping at bay any worries of the day that is ending. Part 5. You close the book slowly. The sound of the leather cover settling onto the wood is final and soft, marking the end of your intellectual exploration for today. You pass your hand one last time over the rough surface of the binding, saying goodbye to the words that sleep within. The library seems darker now, more intimate. The candles have consumed a bit more of their wax, and the shadows have lengthened, inviting sleep. It is time to let the books rest, and for you to do the same. You head toward the exit, walking with a new lightness. The visit to the library has cleared your mind, ordering your thoughts like the volumes on the shelves. Upon reaching the oak door, you take one last look back. The room remains motionless, vigilant in its sacred silence, a time capsule where the past and the present coexist in harmony. You step out into the hallway. The air is a bit cooler here, announcing the deep night. The path to the dormitories is clear and in shadow, lit only by the moonlight entering through the high windows of the cloister. Your steps are slow, heavy in a good way, laden with a pleasant fatigue. The library remains behind, guarding its treasures, while you move forward, serene and at peace, toward the well-deserved rest that awaits you. Everything is calm. Everything is well. Chapter 15. You hear the distant, deep and monotonous echo of a Gregorian chant vibrating softly against the cold stone walls, a melody designed to calm the spirit and slow the pulse. Here is part 15 of the story, written following your instructions and style guide. Part 1. You leave the library behind, closing the heavy oak door with a reverent softness. The scent of ancient parchment and cured leather remains inside, sheltered in the darkness as you step back into the stone corridor. The air out here is slightly cooler, a subtle draft that moves through the monastery corridors like a sigh of the night. Your steps are silent upon the flagstones, worn down by centuries of monastic sandals. There is no rush in your walk. The fatigue you feel is not heavy, but a kind companion, indicating that the day has fulfilled its purpose. As you move forward, you notice that the absolute silence that reigned among the books begins to transform. It is not broken, it simply changes texture. At first, it is almost imperceptible, like the hum of a distant bee or the brush of the wind against a high tower. But as you approach the heart of the building, toward the central nave that connects the dormitories with the chapel, the sound takes shape. It is a deep, grave, and constant echo. The bare stone walls, cold to the touch and solid as mountains, act as conductors for this vibration, carrying a melody that seems to arise from the earth itself. You stop for a moment by a narrow window overlooking the inner courtyard. Moonlight bathes the garden of simples, where medicinal herbs sleep beneath the dew. Everything is motionless outside, but inside the air trembles softly. You recognize the sound. It is plain chant, the unified voice of the community, rising in the final vigil before absolute rest. Part 2. You continue your way, guided now not by sight, but by hearing. The corridor widens, and the acoustics become richer, more enveloping. It is Gregorian chant, a tradition that has traveled through the centuries to reach this precise moment. There are no instruments, no unnecessary ornaments, only the human voice in its purest and most disciplined state. The notes are long, sustained in the air like threads of incense smoke that refuse to dissipate. It is monotonous music in the noblest sense of the word. It does not seek to startle or amuse, but to align the spirit with a slower rhythm, the rhythm of eternity. You feel the vibration resonate in your own chest, a physical resonance that seems to massage your thoughts, smoothing out any wrinkles of worry that might remain from the day. As you pass under a semicircular arch, you imagine the monks in the choir stalls. You do not need to see them to know they are there. Figures wrapped in their habits, heads bowed, merging their individual identities into a single sounding body. You remember the stories of how, centuries ago, men like Guido of Arezzo sought a way to capture these ethereal melodies on paper.
You think of Guido's hand drawing the first lines of the staff, devising a system so that this sound, designed to calm the soul and elevate prayer, would not be lost to oblivion. Thanks to that patience, to that dedication to capturing the invisible in ink, today you can hear the same cadence that kings and peasants heard 500 years ago. It is an invisible bond that unites you to history, a cord of sound that traverses time. Part 3. You approach the side entrance of the chapel. The door is ajar, allowing a dim golden light to spill onto the corridor flagstones. You do not enter. You prefer to stay on the threshold, protected by the gloom, being a silent witness to this nightly ritual. From your position, you see the flicker of candles reflected in the high stone of the walls. The chant is now clear and deep. They are reciting Compline, the prayer at the end of the day. The grave voices of the elder monks sustain the bass of the melody, solid and earthy, while some younger voices add a lighter texture, floating above like birds over a cliff. The melody rises and falls in gentle waves, mimicking the breathing of someone sleeping peacefully. There is no urgency. Each syllable is pronounced with deliberation, extending time, diluting the seconds until the clock ceases to matter. You watch how the candlelight dances to the rhythm of the voices, creating long shadows that stretch and shrink on the columns, as if the architecture itself were breathing in time with the chant. It is a moment of perfect harmony between man and the space he inhabits. The cold stone receives the warmth of the voice, and returns it softened, creating an atmosphere of refuge. Here, nothing bad can reach you. The outside world, with its dusty roads, its storms, and its uncertainties, has ceased to exist. Only this sanctuary of sound and dim light remains. Part 4. You lean gently against the stone wall. The coldness of the material seeps through your clothes, but it is a pleasant cold, contrasting with the warmth you feel inside. You close your eyes for a moment and let the Gregorian chant wash over you. You notice your pulse slowing down, synchronizing with the measured rhythm of the liturgy. Your breathing becomes deeper and more regular. The tension in your shoulders dissolves, falling to the floor like a heavy cloak you no longer need to carry. The melody acts as a balm, an ancient and powerful lullaby designed to prepare the mind for the world of dreams. You hear the final cadence of a psalm, the Amen resonating and slowly fading until it becomes a silence charged with meaning. It is not an empty silence, it is a space filled with peace, where the echo of the last note continues to float in the auditory memory. You feel a deep gratitude for this moment of pause. In medieval life, where work is hard and the elements are often relentless, these moments of sublime beauty are the nourishment that sustains the spirit. It is the certainty that there is an order, a structure, and a calm that always returns at the end of the day, no matter what has happened under the sun. Part 5. The chant ceases completely, leaving behind a sense of fulfillment. You hear the soft rustle of wool robes as the monks stand and extinguish the candles one by one. The chapel slowly plunges into darkness, returning the spotlight to the night. You push away from the wall and resume your path toward the dormitories. Your steps are now even lighter, almost weightless. You carry the vibration of the music with you, stored inside like a warm ember that will accompany you during sleep. The final corridor is short and familiar. You reach your room. It is simple, austere, but cozy. A small window lets in a beam of moonlight that illuminates your bed. The air smells of dried lavender and clean wood. You feel safe, protected by the thick walls of the monastery and by the peace that the chant has left imprinted in every corner of the building. You prepare for sleep with slow movements, without breaking the state of serenity you have reached. As you lie down, the pleasant fatigue envelops you completely. The distant echo of that Gregorian chant resonates in your mind like a gentle caress.
Seems to return to your mind, now as a mental whisper, soft and monotonous, inviting you to close your eyes and let go. Everything is calm, the night is yours, and the rest is deep and secure.
Part 4. Your host points towards the south with a long, bony finger. You follow his indication, and your eyes find Orion, the hunter. He is immense, dominating the winter sky. The 3 stars of his belt are perfectly aligned, shining with an intensity that almost seems to illuminate the stone of the balcony. Mentally, you trace the imaginary lines that join the points of light. You see the bow, the raised arm, the sword. They are not just random stars, they are stories, myths that have survived empires and eras.
The astronomer traces a line in the air, connecting Sirius, the brightest star of all, with the giant's shoulder. You realize how this sky governs the daily life of the people sleeping below. The peasants look at these same constellations to know when it is time for sowing and harvesting. Sailors on distant coasts rely on the North Star, motionless and faithful, so as not to lose themselves in the immensity of the dark ocean. The sky is the clock, the calendar, and the map of humanity. The astronomer leans over a parchment and notes a position. The scratching of his quill on the dry skin is the only sound, a sound both harsh and soft at once, which accentuates the stillness. You feel small, but not insignificant. You are part of this perfect mechanism, a silent witness to the slow and majestic rotation of the celestial sphere. Part 5. You observe Ursa Major, the Wain, rotating slowly around the pole. You imagine the guards on the battlements of the nearby castle rubbing their hands from the cold, looking at this same group of stars to calculate how long until dawn and the change of guard. The atmosphere in the tower is of absolute peace. There is no rush here. Time seems to have stopped, or rather expanded, to coincide with the time of the stars, which is eternal. Anxiety dissolves before the immensity. Everyday problems seem distant, invisible in the darkness of the valley.
The astronomer straightens up and looks you in the eye for the first time. There is a slight smile on his face, an expression of kindness and complicity. He has shared his most precious treasure with you, a clear vision of the universe. Without the need for words, he lets you know that the night is safe, that the order of the cosmos remains firm, and that everything is in its place. You step away from the window with a sense of deep gratitude. The cold of the night has awakened your spirit, but now the calm of the stars invites you to rest again. You leave the sage with his measurements and his maps, the sleepless guardian of the heavens. You descend the spiral staircase. The return feels lighter, as if you were carrying a bit of that starlight within you. As you leave the tower and cross the courtyard again toward your room, the silence of the monastery envelops you like a warm embrace. The image of the pure, brilliant, and perfect sky remains in your mind, a promise of order and beauty that will accompany you as you close your eyes, ready for a deep and restorative sleep. Chapter 17. Your mind travels toward the coast to feel the gentle and constant swaying of a merchant ship anchored in the port, rocked by dark and calm waves hitting the wood. Here is part 17 of the story, written following your instructions for tone, style, and content.
It smells of cured leather, ancient parchment, beeswax, and the cedar wood of the shelves. You stop at the threshold, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light. The sun has already descended enough that the interior is bathed in long, welcoming shadows, barely broken by the amber light of a few candles burning in bronze candelabras strategically distributed. Around you, the walls disappear behind endless rows of shelves. They are not mere furniture, but guardians of history. The volumes rest there, some so large they require both hands to be moved, bound in dark hides with metal corners that gleam faintly. You feel an instinctive reverence, a sense of smallness before the immensity of time accumulated within these four walls. Here, the outside world, with its dusty roads and noisy markets, seems like a distant dream. Only the stillness exists, dense and protective, wrapping around you like a heavy blanket. Part 2. You move slowly down the central aisle, sliding your hand over the slanted reading desks. The wood is polished by the rubbing of thousands of habit sleeves over generations. You observe how some of the most valuable books are fastened to the desks with fine iron chains, the libri catenati, ensuring that wisdom always remains within reach of those who seek it, yet secure in its home.
You approach one of the narrow windows, a Romanesque arch that offers a privileged view of the valley. From this height, medieval life unfolds in a tableau of twilight serenity. Below, beyond the orchard walls, the village prepares for the night. You see the thatched and wooden roofs, from which wisps of gray smoke escape, rising lazily toward the sky, a sign that homes are lighting their fires for dinner. The landscape is a patchwork quilt of dark greens and browns. The dirt roads, which during the day saw the passage of carts and merchants, are now deserted, save for a solitary figure returning home with a slow pace. In the distance, the silhouette of a castle is outlined against the violet horizon, its towers firm and stoic, watching over the valley. There are no threats, only the eternal watch of stone over the land. The evening wind gently moves the treetops in the nearby forest, and although the window glass separates you from the outside, you can imagine the sound of leaves whispering secrets to the wind. It is a world in order, where every element, from the peasant to the noble, from the stone to the star, has its place and its moment of rest. Part 3. You turn away from the window, and your attention returns to the books. Your fingers brush the spine of a particularly thick volume. Upon opening it, the creak of the parchment sounds like a welcome. The pages are not of fragile paper, but of sturdy vellum, soft to the touch, with a creamy texture that has survived entire empires. At one of the nearby tables, you imagine the ethereal presence of those who walked these halls before you. You think of figures like Alcuin of York. Although he is not physically here, his legacy breathes in the organization of this place. You remember the stories of how, from the court of Charlemagne, Alcuin promoted the correction of texts and the creation of libraries like this one, beacons of light in uncertain times. It is easy to imagine a man like him, in a simple tunic, leaning over a text, not with the urgency of the scribe who copies, but with the calm of the scholar who understands. The Carolingian script, clear and rounded, which you see on the open page before you, is a gift from that era. It is a writing designed to be read with clarity, to bring order to chaos, to facilitate the transmission of the human voice through the centuries. The presence of these historical figures is not academic or distant. It feels close, human.
They are silent companions on your nightly journey. You feel gratitude toward those anonymous and known hands that prepared the ink, tanned the skin, and traced the guidelines, allowing this moment of peace to be possible for you here and now. Part 4. The light from a nearby candle flickers slightly, making shadows dance over the illuminated text. You lean in to observe a detail in the margin of the page. It is an initial letter, a capital Q, decorated with astonishing detail. The artist used gold leaf, which even in this meager light captures a warm and brilliant glint. Around the letter, vines of lapis lazuli blue and cinnabar red intertwine, creating a small labyrinth of beauty. You do not need to read the Latin to understand the book's message. The beauty of the page speaks to you of patience. Someone spent weeks, perhaps months, on this single sheet alone. That absolute dedication, that lack of haste is transmitted to you. Your breathing falls into step with the slow rhythm of that ancient artist. There is no need to rush. Time in the library is not measured in minutes or hours, but in the depth of thought and the stillness of the spirit. You turn the page delicately. The sound is soft, dry, satisfying. You find a map, a representation of the known world drawn in sepia ink. It shows distant lands, oceans populated by fantastic creatures that inspire not fear, but curiosity, and stars that guide navigators. It is a reminder that the world is vast and wonderful, but that you are safe, anchored in this harbor of silence and wood. The temperature in the room is perfect, neither cold nor hot, an atmosphere preserved to protect the books, which in turn protects you. You feel enveloped by wisdom, not as a burden, but as a support. The shelves surround you like the walls of a gentle fortress, keeping at bay any worries of the day that is ending. Part 5. You close the book slowly, the sound of the leather cover settling onto.
The wood is final and soft, marking the end of your intellectual exploration for today. You pass your hand one last time over the rough surface of the binding, saying goodbye to the words that sleep within. The library seems darker now, more intimate. The candles have consumed a bit more of their wax, and the shadows have lengthened, inviting sleep. It is time to let the books rest, and for you to do the same. You head toward the exit, walking with a new lightness. The visit to the library has cleared your mind, ordering your thoughts like the volumes on the shelves. Upon reaching the oak door, you take one last look back. The room remains motionless, vigilant in its sacred silence, a time capsule where the past and the present coexist in harmony. You step out into the hallway. The air is a bit cooler here, announcing the deep night. The path to the dormitories is clear and in shadow, lit only by the moonlight entering through the high windows of the cloister. Your steps are slow, heavy in a good way, laden with a pleasant fatigue. The library remains behind, guarding its treasures, while you move forward, serene and at peace, toward the well-deserved rest that awaits you. Everything is calm. Everything is well.
Chapter 18. You fly over silent hills until you find a shepherd fast asleep beside his flock, wrapped in a thick wool cloak under the protective branches of a centuries-old oak. Here is part 18 of the story, written following your instructions and style guide. The gentle oscillation of the merchant ship begins to fade slowly in your memory, transforming into a sensation of absolute lightness. Your consciousness detaches from the salty wood and the harbor waters, rising with the softness of morning mist. You leave behind the silent figure of Prince Henry and his gaze fixed on the horizon, allowing the night breeze to carry you inland, away from the coast, toward the heart of the mainland. Now you float, weightless, over a landscape sleeping under the mantle of a clear, starry night. Below, the medieval world rests in a deep stillness.
You glide over paths of packed earth, ancient trails that by day saw the passage of wagons loaded with wheat and pilgrims with worn sandals, but which are now empty, bathed in the silvery light of the full moon. You fly over small villages of low houses built with rough stone and roofs of thatch or dark tile. There are no lights in the windows. Life is governed by the sun, and at this hour, rest is absolute. The outline of a small Romanesque church is barely discernible, solid and eternal, its stone bell tower silhouetted against the dark blue sky. Everything is silence, except for the whisper of the wind caressing the fields and the vineyards resting on the slopes.
As you move forward, the terrain begins to rise. You leave behind the populated valleys and enter a region of soft, rolling hills. Here, nature reclaims its space. The air becomes cooler, permeated with the scent of thyme, rosemary, and damp earth.
It is a clean, ancient scent, the perfume of a land that has been grazed for centuries. Your flight becomes slower, descending gently toward the curve of a solitary hill. The tall grass sways rhythmically, as if the earth itself were breathing in a deep sleep. There are no castles here, nor great fortresses, only the vastness of the open field and the celestial vault slowly turning above you. On the slope of this silent hill, something catches your attention. It is a dark and majestic shape, rising solitary in the middle of the slope. As you approach, you discover it is a centuries-old oak. Its branches are immense, thick and gnarled, stretching out horizontally like protective arms encompassing a sacred space. It is a tree that has seen generations, storms and droughts pass, and it remains there, stoic and strong. Under the shelter of this botanical giant, you discover a scene of absolute peace. There, sheltered from the dew by the tree's canopy, you find a shepherd.
He is not a nobleman or a warrior, but a man of the land, an essential figure in this tapestry of medieval life. He is fast asleep, reclining on an improvised bed of dried ferns and tanned hides. His body rests with the heaviness of one who has worked from dawn until dusk, walking leagues behind his flock under the Iberian sun. You stop to observe him, floating invisible by his side. The shepherd is wrapped in a thick, rustic wool cloak, a garment likely woven by his own family on some homemade loom. The wool is of a natural brown color, dense and warm, a perfect barrier against the night cold. You can almost feel the rough but comforting texture of the fabric, which smells of wood smoke and open fields. Around him, the flock sleeps. There are dozens of sheep, huddled against one another, forming a carpet of white and grayish wool under the shadow of the oak.
The sound they emit is hypnotic, a collective breath, soft and constant, occasionally accompanied by a faint, sleepy bleat, or the sound of a hoof readjusting on the grass. This sound is the heartbeat of the countryside, a natural lullaby that deepens the sense of calm. Beside the shepherd, a large mastiff rests with its head on its front paws. Although its eyes are closed, its ears twitch slightly with the breeze, always attentive, always faithful. But tonight there are no dangers. The wolves are far away, and peace reigns in the hills. The dog sighs, releasing the tension of the day, and surrenders to sleep as well. You observe the shepherd's face in the moonlight filtering through the oak leaves. It is a face weathered by the elements, with marked lines around the eyes that speak of years looking at distant horizons. His wooden staff, polished by use, rests beside him, his tool and his support, now inert until the sun rises.
Beside him, a leather satchel contains perhaps a piece of hard bread and cheese, the simple sustenance of a life without excess. There is something deeply sacred in this simplicity. While Prince Henry dreamed of oceans and discoveries on his ship, this man dreams of the seasons, of the rain needed for the pastures, and of the well-being of his animals. Both are part of the same world, connected by the same night and the same stars that now shine intensely over the tree's canopy. You feel invited to share this refuge. The presence of the oak is like a safe roof. Its roots sink deep into the history of the land, and its branches filter the starlight, creating lace patterns on the ground. You settle mentally into this space, feeling the warmth emanating from the flock and the security offered by the ancient tree. The wind moves the leaves with a sound that resembles the waves you left behind, creating continuity in your journey.
It is a constant whisper, shh, shh, inviting you to let go of any remaining thoughts. Here, in the solitude of the hills, time seems to stand still. There is no urgency, no pending tasks, only the eternal cycle of night and rest. You imagine yourself also wrapped in a warm wool cloak, protected from the night dew, feeling the firm support of the earth beneath your back. The shepherd's breathing is slow and deep, and without realizing it, your own breathing synchronizes with his. You inhale the pure air of the hill. You exhale any tension. You inhale peace. You exhale fatigue. The scene is perfect in its stillness. The moon continues its slow arc across the sky. The stars blink like silent guardians, and the oak stands firm, protecting the sleep of those who seek refuge under its shadow. You feel part of this picture, one more traveler who has found a safe place to rest in the midst of the vastness. Everything is fine. The night is long and benevolent.
The world turns slowly, and in this forgotten corner of the hills, tranquility is the only law that prevails. You let yourself be carried away by this feeling of belonging and calm, ready to continue deepening your own rest, lulled by the silence of the earth and the protection of the great oak.
Chapter 19. You enter a humble weaver's cottage, where the loom is still, and the rough but warm textures of the linen and wool threads invite touch and absolute repose. Here is part 19 of the story, written following your instructions and the style guide. Part 19. You leave behind the solitary hill and the protective shadow of the centuries-old oak, where the shepherd and his sheep continue their uninterrupted sleep under the mantle of the stars. You rise gently, like a leaf carried by a warm and slow night breeze, moving away from the stillness of the open field to descend toward the valley that opens up ahead. The transition is imperceptible, a serene glide through the cool air of the medieval dawn. Below, the landscape changes subtly. The paths of packed earth, which during the day resonate with the passage of wagons and merchants, are now pale and silent lines winding between the fields.
In the distance, the silhouette of a small village is outlined against the deep blue of the horizon. There are no lit torches or movement on the low stone walls. The entire known world seems to have accepted the gift of rest. You approach the roofs of thatch and wood, descending until your imaginary feet brush the cobblestone floor of a narrow alley. The air here smells different from that of the hill. There is a scent of cured wood, of chimney smoke that died out hours ago, and the sweet smell of stored hay. It is a human environment, intimate and sheltered. In front of you, a modest but solid structure catches your attention. It is not a castle or a church, but a working dwelling, a weaver's cottage. The thick wooden door, worn by years of use and seasonal rains, gives way gently to your presence, inviting you to enter without the need for keys or bolts. You cross the threshold and are enveloped by an atmosphere of absolute domestic calm.
The interior of the cottage is in twilight, lit only by the dying glow of some embers in the stone hearth at the back of the room. That dim, orange, and weak light is enough to reveal the heart of this home, the loom. It occupies much of the space, a dark and robust wooden structure built with beams of oak and chestnut, polished by the constant friction of hands and the passage of time. Now, however, the loom is still. There is no rhythmic thud of wood against wood, nor the hiss of the shuttle flying from one side to the other. The machine rests, and its silence is deep, almost sacred, as if the instrument itself were sleeping after a long day of creation. You approach slowly, your senses sharpen in this stillness. You can perceive the characteristic aroma of this place, an earthy and animal mixture of lanolin, that natural grease that protects raw wool, combined with the dry and clean smell of linen fibers. It is an ancient, fundamental smell that speaks of protection against the cold and of the clothing that covers humanity. You reach out your hand, and your fingers brush the warp, the vertical threads tensioned on the frame. You feel the perfect tension, the promise of a fabric that does not yet exist, but is in the process of being. They are firm, resistant strings. Upon touching them, you notice the static vibration of halted work, a pause in time that allows you to appreciate the patience required by every centimeter of fabric. Beside the loom, on a low rustic wooden table, rest the balls and skeins. This is where the texture becomes an invitation to rest. You see piles of carded wool, soft clouds of ecru and taupe waiting to be spun. The sight of that fluffy softness brings an immediate sense of comfort. You imagine sinking your hands into that virgin wool, feeling its intrinsic warmth, that heat that retains life and keeps the dampness of the night at bay.
Beyond, there are finished pieces of fabric, carefully folded on a bench. You approach them. As you run your hand over the surface of a thick woolen cloth, you feel its coarseness. It is not a hostile coarseness, but an honest, robust, and warm texture. It is the kind of fabric that, on a medieval winter night, would mean the difference between shivering and sleeping peacefully. The gentle friction against your skin conveys security. It is a fabric made to last, to protect, to envelop.
Beside the wool, you find the linen. Its touch is different, cooler, smoother, with a slight irregularity in the weave that betrays the human hand behind its creation. The contrast between the rustic warmth of the wool and the crisp coolness of the linen creates a perfect sensory balance. Everything in this room is designed for touch, for the physical sensation of being covered and safe. You observe the corners of the room.
On the shelves rest simple tools, carding combs with iron teeth, boxwood spindles, and woven wicker baskets. Each object is in its place, ordered with the discipline of one who loves their craft. There is no chaos here, only the serenity of work accomplished. The daily life of the Middle Ages, often harsh and demanding, finds its moment of peace in this workshop. The weaver, whoever they may be, now sleeps in some adjoining room or in a loft, trusting in the security of their walls and the stillness of their tools. The atmosphere invites you to stay, to become part of this silence. You head toward a corner near the hearth, where a low pallet, covered with sheepskins and blankets woven on this very loom, seems to wait for you. The light from the embers flickers one last time before settling into a deep, steady red glow. You sit on the edge of the bed. The textures surrounding you are a balm.
The wood of the floor creaks imperceptibly, a homely sound that accentuates the silence rather than breaking it. Outside, the wind brushes the thatched eaves of the roof, a distant whisper reminding you that you are sheltered, protected from the elements. You lie back, allowing gravity to do its work. Your body sinks into the softness of the skins and the firmness of the wool. It is a simple bed, without palatial luxuries, but infinitely cozy. You feel the weight of the blankets over you, a pleasant weight that anchors your body and releases your mind. Here, surrounded by the threads that connect the past with the present, tension dissolves completely. There is no rush to finish the cloth. The loom will wait for dawn. The threads will wait. The outside world, with its castles, its ships, and its long roads, fades into the distance. You close your eyes and focus on the feeling of warmth. The temperature is perfect, retained by the stone walls and the stacked fabrics.
You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the calm air of the cabin, feeling how each exhalation takes you deeper into a state of absolute relaxation. The image of the loom in the twilight remains etched in your mind, still, noble, patient. It is a guardian of your sleep. In this artisan's refuge, where raw material is transformed into shelter, you too are transformed. You cease to be a traveler and become part of the stillness, one more thread in the vast and quiet weave of the night. Everything is soft, everything is warm, everything is at peace.
Chapter 20. A fine rain begins to fall over the medieval landscape, drumming softly on the thatched roofs and slate tiles, creating a white noise that lulls the entire world to sleep. Here is part 20 of the story, designed to induce sleep and deep relaxation. Part 1. The First Whisper. You are still resting on the pallet in the weaver's cabin, wrapped in the warmth of the raw wool blankets. Your breathing is slow, rhythmic with the stillness that inhabits this room. Gradually, a new but infinitely ancient sound begins to filter in from the outside,
It is not a noise that interrupts, but a melody that completes the silence. It is the rain. It begins timidly, one drop, then another, and soon a soft chorus of thousands of tiny drops descending from a pearl-colored sky. You listen to how the water greets the medieval world. Upon the thatched roof under which you lie, the sound is dull, muffled, and rustic.
It is a constant whisper, as if nature were asking permission to cleanse the air and the earth. You imagine, with your eyes closed, how the sky has gently closed over the valley. The low clouds have descended to embrace the hills, erasing distant horizons and creating a smaller, more intimate world. The long road you traveled no longer exists, nor do the distant mountains. Now there is only this moment and this refuge. The light entering through the small window of the cabin changes. It becomes dimmer, more bluish and diffused. The air cools slightly, bringing with it that unmistakable scent of wet earth, damp stone, and grass drinking gratefully. It is the aroma of life renewing itself in calm. You feel safe, knowing that you don't have to go anywhere, that your only task now is to listen to the rain fall. Part 2. The Village Underwater. Your mind floats gently out of the cabin, observing the village without getting wet, like a quiet spirit wandering the cobblestone streets.
The fine rain has transformed the landscape. The dust of the road has settled, and the irregular paving stones begin to shine as if they had been polished by invisible hands. The houses of the village, with their dark wooden beams and their walls of adobe and lime, seem to huddle against one another under the downpour. From the stone and brick chimneys, thin columns of gray smoke rise. The smoke does not rise high today. The pressure of the rain forces it to spread out, creating a blanket of aromatic mist that smells of oak and pine wood burning in the hearths. You see the wooden shutters closed on the windows, protecting the warmth within. Behind those timbers, families gather. Artisans pause their labors or work by candlelight. The rain has dictated a truce in the hard work of the fields. It is a time gifted for rest. In the center of the village, the old stone fountain receives the water from the sky.
The surface of the basin ripples with infinite concentric waves, a hypnotic dance of circles that expand and disappear. The water overflows gently, running through the channels carved into the ground, cleaning the streets, carrying away any trace of heaviness toward the river that flows further down in the valley. Everything flows, everything is cleansed, everything becomes calm. Part 3. Julian's Window. Your consciousness travels a little further, following the sound of the water to a small stone church at the edge of the village. Its walls are thick, built to last centuries, and its black slate tiles resonate with a different timbre than the thatch, a musical tapping, clear and constant. Attached to the walls of this church, you imagine a small cell, an anchorite cell, a place of absolute retreat. There, a historical figure rests in the serenity of her own contemplation. It is Julian of Norwich, the mystic and writer.
Although perhaps the time is not exact, Her presence feels alive in this atmosphere of recollection. You visualize her sitting by a narrow window overlooking the cloister garden. She observes the same rain that you hear. On her lap rests a parchment and a quill, but now she does not write. She simply watches how the drops slide down the ivy climbing the stone walls. Julian holds something small in her hand, the size of a hazelnut, and contemplates the fragility of existence against the immensity of nature. But there is no fear in her, only a deep trust. The sound of the rain confirms to her what she herself once wrote, that all shall be well, and all manner of thing shall be well. The rain for her and for you is a protective mantle. She adjusts her woolen shawl over her shoulders, smiling slightly at the gray beauty of the day. In her stillness, you find a mirror of your own peace.
There is no need for words, nor for great revelations, only the certainty of being sheltered while the sky weeps softly over the earth. Part 4. The Castle and the Fields. The rain extends beyond the village, covering the entire medieval kingdom with its translucent veil. In the distance, upon a hill overlooking the valley, the silhouette of a castle rises. Its towers, tall and robust, blur into the mist. The banners that usually wave in the wind now hang heavy and soaked, resting against the poles. The guards on the battlements have taken refuge under the wooden lean-tos, wrapped in their thick cloaks, watching as the landscape becomes an impressionist painting of greens and grays. The castle moat, quiet and dark, receives the rain with a barely perceptible sound, disturbing the reflection of the stone walls. Even in the fortress, the rhythm of life has slowed.
The courtyard is empty, and only the constant dripping from the stone gargoyles is heard, spitting the water away from the foundations. Beyond the castle, the cultivated fields drink thirstily. The green wheat bows under the weight of the drops, and the dark, fertile earth absorbs the gift from the sky. The forests surrounding the valley seem to exhale a sigh of relief. The leaves of the oaks and beeches shine with moisture, and the moss covering the roots of the ancient trees swells, becoming a vibrant and deep green. There are no birds flying, no carts on the roads. The entire world has paused. It is a moment of brief hibernation, a collective nap induced by the weather. The rain acts as a curtain, separating the bustle of the world from your inner space, creating a bubble of perfect and comforting isolation. Part 5. The return to the shelter. Slowly, your attention returns from the wet landscape to the interior of the weaver's cabin.
The mental journey has left you with a sense of freshness, but your body remains immensely warm under the blankets. The sound of the rain on the thatched roof is now the only universe that exists. It is a white noise, perfect and without edges. Tap, 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 shh. A rhythm that demands nothing of you, that does not ask to be interpreted, only felt. You notice how the afternoon light begins to fade, giving way to an early twilight brought on by the clouds. The shadows in the cabin lengthen, soft and kind. The smell of wool, wood, and the rain outside blend into a perfume that invites the deepest sleep. You feel the weight of your eyelids. The relaxation that began in your feet has now risen to your head, softening your forehead, relaxing your jaw. You feel anchored to this cot, to this floor, to this moment in time. The rain continues its gentle dance. It will not stop soon, and that is a comfort. You have hours ahead of this lulling sound.
There is no rush, no destination, nothing more than this instant of liquid and sonorous peace. You let yourself go, floating in the safety of the cabin, while the medieval world sleeps under the gentle rain. Everything is well. Everything is calm.
Chapter 21. You feel how the rhythm of medieval life comes to a complete halt, and the breath of history synchronizes with yours in a slow, heavy, and deep beat. Here is part 21 of your story, designed to induce a state of deep relaxation and sleep. Part 1. The rain, which earlier pitter-pattered insistently upon the thatched roof of the weaver's cabin, has changed its tone. Now it is barely a whisper, a damp caress descending upon the world, sealing the silence of the night. Inside the room, the heat from the embers in the central hearth emits a dim orange glow, painting long and lazy shadows on the adobe and wood walls. You find yourself in a state of absolute stillness. You observe the large wooden loom in the corner, motionless. During the day, its timbers creak and sing under constant work, intertwining strands of raw wool, but now it rests. It is a silent structure, an oak skeleton sleeping upright, waiting for a tomorrow that seems very far away.
There is no urgency in this place. Time, which in the modern world runs wild, has decided here to sit by your side. You feel how the rhythm of medieval life comes to a complete halt. It is not a sudden breaking, but a gentle deceleration, like a great mill wheel that, after turning all day driven by the river, loses inertia until it becomes static, dripping fresh water into the darkness. Your breathing becomes slower, mimicking that pause. The air smells of burnt wood, of dried herbs hanging from the beams, and of the wet earth breathing on the other side of the door. You are safe. You are protected by centuries of distance and by the solidity of this present moment. Your consciousness floats gently out of the cabin, gliding effortlessly toward the sleeping village. The houses huddle in the darkness, small islands of human warmth under the vast cloudy sky.
The roads, which during the day are a torrent of carts, animals, and mercantile voices, are now rivers of still mud, silvered by the scant moonlight filtering through the clouds. Nothing moves. The chickens sleep on their perches. The sheep huddle against one another in the stone pens, forming a soft mass of wool and heat. Even the guard dogs, usually alert to the snap of a branch, rest with their muzzles between their paws, trusting in the peace that the rain has brought with it. In the distance, the silhouette of a Romanesque church is outlined against the dark horizon. Its thick stone walls have absorbed the afternoon sun,
and now radiate an invisible warmth into the night. It is a stone anchor in a sea of silence. You imagine the interior, the vast and empty nave, where the scent of ancient incense and beeswax floats in the stagnant air. There, in the sacred stillness, dust dances slowly in the darkness, suspended in a time that does not move forward. Everything is permanence.
Everything is stability. Part 3. Following the invisible course of the gentle wind, your mind travels toward a nearby hill where a castle stands. It is not a fortress of war, nor a place of clamor, but a noble residence that sleeps. The high gray stone walls seem to grow from the very rock of the hill, solid and immovable. At the top of a tower, under the shelter of a barbican, you discern a solitary figure. It is a watchman, but there is no tension in his posture. He is leaning against the cold battlements, wrapped in a thick cloak of dark-dyed wool to protect himself from the night dampness. His gaze does not search for enemies, for the night is peaceful. He simply watches as the mist begins to rise from the moat and covers the fields like a soft white blanket. He could be a veteran man-at-arms, someone who has seen kings and seasons pass, and who now values, more than anything, this silence.
You hear, or think you hear, the slight clinking of his chainmail as he adjusts his weight, a metallic and rhythmic sound that dissolves instantly into the air. He breathes deeply of the cold, clean air. You breathe with him. You inhale the freshness of the wet stone. You exhale any remaining worry. The night watch is quiet. The castle is a stone giant protecting your sleep, a massive presence that assures you that nothing will disturb this rest. Part 4. Beyond the castle, the landscape stretches toward a valley where a monastery sits by the bend of a river. Here, history feels denser, more concentrated. In a small cell of the scriptorium, a single tallow candle is about to go out. There, an elderly monk, perhaps a meticulous chronicler like Jean Froissart, or a contemplative soul similar to Thomas à Kempis, has just placed his goose quill upon the oak table. He has been copying ancient texts, preserving words for the future, but his task is finished for today.
You observe his hands, stained with iron gall ink, resting upon the rough parchment. The texture of the animal skin, cured and scraped, is palpable beneath his fingers. The monk closes his eyes for a moment, enjoying the absolute silence of the library. He is surrounded by volumes bound in leather and wood, treasures of knowledge sleeping on the shelves. He feels a deep satisfaction, the certainty of duty fulfilled. He rises slowly, his coarse wool habit rustling softly, and blows out the candle with a gentle puff. The darkness that floods the room is not terrifying, it is welcoming, like a velvet cloak falling over the shoulders. The smell of extinguished wax mixes with the sweet aroma of old books. The monk retires to rest, and with him, the last vestige of intellectual activity in the region is extinguished. The mind of history goes blank, tranquil, ready for repose. Part 5. Now your perspective rises even higher, encompassing the entire medieval landscape under the night.
You no longer look at the details, but at the totality of the picture. You see the deep, dark forests where ancient trees intertwine their branches in a static embrace. You see the streams flowing with a constant murmur, a white and liquid sound that lulls the earth. You feel how the breath of history synchronizes with yours in a slow, heavy, and deep beat. It is a geological, ancestral rhythm. You inhale, and you feel how the mist expands through the valleys. You exhale, and you feel how the darkness settles gently into the corners of the villages. There is no rush. There is no destination to reach. The 14th century, with all its complexities, has simplified itself into this moment of pure existence. Daily life, with its markets, its labors, and its travels, has stopped. It is as if the entire world has exhaled a long sigh and decided not to inhale again for many hours. Part 6. You feel heavy, but it is a pleasant heaviness.
It is the gravity of the earth claiming your body for rest. Your eyelids are heavy like the great oak doors of the castle you saw before, closing slowly to protect the interior. Your muscles relax, releasing tension like the knots of a rope being undone one by one. The sound of the rain has almost completely ceased, leaving only the sporadic dripping from the leaves of the trees, a natural metronome marking the way toward deep sleep. Plock, plock, plock. Each drop is a second that stretches, a moment that dilates. You are floating in the center of history, but nothing touches you, nothing demands anything of you. You are an invisible spectator in a world that has found its peace. The security of these stone walls, the warmth of the extinguished hearths, and the protection of the night envelop you. Everything is in order. The past sleeps, and you sleep with it.
You let yourself be carried by the slow current of this river of time, sinking deeper and deeper into the comfort of silence, ready to cross the final threshold toward restorative sleep.
Chapter 22. You visualize how, one by one, the last tallow candles in the windows of the houses, the castle, and the monastery are extinguished, plunging the entire kingdom into a velvety and secure darkness. Part 22. Inside one of these dwellings, the air is warm and smells of burnt wood and bread baked hours ago. You observe, almost feeling the pleasant tiredness in your own bones, how a hand, weathered by labor, takes a small metal candle snuffer. On the rustic table, a tallow candle flickers timidly. Its flame is small, a drop of amber light that has kept the shadows at bay during supper. With a slow and deliberate movement, the hand covers the flame. For an instant, the glow intensifies inside the small metal bell, and then it vanishes. A thin column of gray smoke spirals up toward the ceiling beams, carrying with it the characteristic scent of extinguished tallow, a familiar smell that in the Middle Ages meant the day had concluded. You hear the soft creak of a rope bed and the sigh of relief from one who lies down under blankets of coarse but warm wool. A house has fallen asleep.
Your attention shifts now, floating like a leaf carried by a non-existent breeze, toward another window and then another. It is a slow and silent choreography. In the baker's house, the last oil lamp consumes itself, lowering in intensity until the wick is dry and darkness claims the kitchen. In the smithy, the embers of the hearth are no more than a dark red memory under a layer of gray ash, without the strength to illuminate, only to slightly warm the room. One by one, the windows of the village turn black. It is like watching eyelids closing heavily. With each light that goes out, you feel your own breathing become deeper, more rhythmic. The entire village plunges into a dreamless sleep, protected by the invisibility of the night. You follow the path of compacted earth, pale under the starlight, climbing the hill toward the fortress. The castle, that immense mass of stone that commands respect by day, now rests like a sleeping giant.
The thick walls retain the heat of the daytime sun, radiating a pleasant temperature that contrasts with the cool air outside. You slip through an arrow slit, entering the keep. Here, life is different, but sleep is the same. In a high chamber, decorated with tapestries narrating stories of hunting and lush forests, a historical figure seeks repose. Imagine Queen Berenguela, known for her prudence and wisdom, sitting on the edge of her canopy bed. There is no urgency in her movements. The castle is at peace. The guards on the battlements barely move, watching an empty and tranquil horizon. Berenguela observes the beeswax candle, much purer and sweeter than those of the village, burning upon a silver candelabra. The light reflects off the gold threads of the tapestries, creating glimmers that dance softly. She closes a prayer book bound in soft leather. The sound of the book closing is dull and final. With a soft breath, barely a whisper of air, she blows out the flame.
The room does not fall into total darkness immediately. The moonlight enters, bluish and milky, bathing the stone floor and the oak chests. But the artificial light, the light of man and of wakefulness, has ended. The castle joins the silence of the village. The darkness here is velvety, dense, due to the quality of the curtains and the solidity of the walls.
It is a safe darkness, designed to protect the sleep of kings and their servants alike. Finally, your visual journey takes you further toward the valley where the monastery stands, solitary and eternal. The monks, who follow the rhythm of the canonical hours, have already finished Compline, the last prayer of the day. The great cloister is deserted, and your mental footsteps make no sound upon the flagstones worn by centuries of sandals. You see the last illuminated window in the entire valley.
It belongs to the prior's cell, or perhaps the library, where some scholar has stolen a few more minutes from the night to finish copying an illuminated initial. But even that dedication has a limit. You see the silhouette of the monk silhouetted against the parchment. He stands, stretches his back slowly, and looks toward the window. He knows he is the last one awake. With an almost imperceptible bow toward the night that God has sent for the rest of soul and body, he brings his fingers to the flame. When that last candle goes out, something extraordinary happens. It is not just the absence of light. It is the arrival of a comforting presence. As that last golden point in the monastery is extinguished, the entire kingdom is unified under the same mantle. There is no longer a distinction between the weaver's hut, the queen's chamber, or the monk's cell. The darkness makes them equal, embraces them, and cradles them with the same tenderness.
You visualize how that velvety darkness extends from horizon to horizon. It is not a void, but a soft substance, almost liquid, that fills the spaces between the trees, that settles in the corners of the rooms, and weighs deliciously upon the eyelids. You feel that security in your own body. Just as the tallow and wax candles have been extinguished, any active thought in your mind fades away. The light of worry goes out, leaving only a column of imaginary smoke that dissipates into nothingness. The outside world has ceased to exist visually. Now only the sensation of being sheltered remains. The darkness is a wall stronger than the stone of the castle, warmer than the hearth of the village, and more sacred than the silence of the monastery. It envelops you completely. It is a fertile and restorative darkness. In it, time stops completely. There is nothing to see, and therefore there is nothing your eyes must seek. They can rest, floating in that sea of black velvet.
The temperature is perfect. The silence is absolute, save for the rhythmic and slow sound of your own breathing, which now synchronizes with the sleeping breath of the entire medieval kingdom. Everything is off. Everything is calm. Everything is well. You let yourself fall, mentally, into that soft depth. You feel how gravity holds you affectionately, anchoring you to your bed, while your mind is freed to wander through this landscape of kind shadows. The last candle is gone. The kingdom sleeps, and you, part of this ancient and serene world, finally surrender to the deep and unreserved embrace of the absolute night.
Chapter 23. You finally surrender to the absolute silence of the ancient night, where time dissolves into nothingness, and only a restorative, deep,
and dreamless sleep remains. Here is part 23 of the story, designed to guide you into deep sleep. Part 1. Now that the last flame has been extinguished in the monk's cell, the world that stretched beneath your gaze has become one with the shadow. There is no longer a distinction between heaven and earth. The horizon has been softly erased, allowing everything to merge into the same dark and velvety matter. Your consciousness, which previously floated over the watchtowers and thatched roofs, begins to descend slowly. It is not a fall, but a soft landing, like a leaf settling on the surface of a calm lake. You feel how the atmosphere of the medieval kingdom changes. Activity has ceased completely. Imagine for a moment the dirt roads that connected the villages.
Now they are deserted, bathed only by the light of the stars piercing through the high clouds. The dust of the path settles, motionless. The carts are stopped next to the barns, their wooden wheels cold and static, waiting patiently for the return of the sun, which now seems like a distant and irrelevant promise. In the forges, the fire is only a memory beneath the gray ashes. The iron, once red hot, has regained its hardness and its cold temperature. The hammer rests upon the anvil in absolute silence. It is a dense silence, but it is not a silence of emptiness. It is a silence of fullness, of a task completed that finally allows for well-deserved rest. You are part of that rest. The need to observe, to understand the story, or to follow the course of events, vanishes. You are no longer a spectator of Queen Berenguela or her subjects. Now you share with them the only thing that equals all beings under the firmament, the sacred need to rest.
Part 2. The ancient night wraps around you like a heavy and warm blanket. It is a protective darkness, similar to what is felt within the thick stone walls of a Romanesque fortress. Imagine that sensation of unshakable security. The walls isolate you from the wind, from the elements, and from the passage of time. Inside the castle, in the royal chambers you previously traversed with your gaze, the air has become still. The heavy velvet curtains covering the windows do not move. The queen sleeps. Her breathing is slow and rhythmic, a soft cadence that joins the breathing of the entire castle. Her worries about the kingdom, her strategies, and her duties have been suspended, left on the shore of wakefulness, far from this ocean of calm. You too can leave your burdens on that shore. You feel how the weight of your own body becomes present, and at the same time pleasant.
It is the tender gravity that invites you to release any tension that still remains in your shoulders, in your back, in your hands. Just as the embers in the fireplaces of the great hall go out little by little, your thoughts lose their brightness and their intensity. They become faint, irrelevant. The logic of the day dissolves. There is nothing to resolve now. The medieval world sleeps,
and in its sleep it finds renewal. Listen in your mind to the sound of silence. It is deep. You can barely hear the occasional creak of old wood settling as the night cools, or perhaps the distant whisper of the wind brushing against the stone battlements. These are sounds that do not alert, but rather lull. They are the confirmation that the world is solid, secure, and that everything is in its correct place. You surrender more deeply to this feeling of anchoring. The visual image of the kingdom blurs, losing its contours and colors.
You no longer see the green hills or the silver rivers. Now you only feel the essence of the peace emanating from the sleeping earth. It is as if you were lying on a bed of fresh straw and clean linen, in a safe room where the temperature is perfect. You feel the soft texture of the imaginary sheets, the comfort of a pillow that receives the weight of your head with total softness. Time, which during the day marked the hours with the church bells and the movement of solar shadows, has ceased to exist. In this deep night, there is no yesterday or tomorrow. There only exists this eternal instant of stillness. It is the same silence that has cradled humanity for centuries, the same restorative pause that calmed kings, peasants, and monks alike. Your breathing synchronizes with this slow and ancient rhythm. You inhale the calm. You exhale any trace of restlessness.
Each time the air leaves your lungs, you sink a little deeper into the mattress. You merge a little more with the welcoming darkness. Your eyelids feel pleasantly heavy, sealed by a natural tranquility. There is no effort in keeping them closed. It is their natural state. Behind your eyes, the darkness is an infinite and serene canvas, free of images, free of demands. It is a vast space where you can float aimlessly, totally safe. Part 4. The dissolution is now almost complete. The village, the castle, the monastery, and the forest have become a single vibration of peace. You no longer need to know where you are. Your consciousness retreats towards its center, seeking the refuge of deep sleep. You feel a warmth that is born from your interior and extends towards your extremities, relaxing every muscle, every fiber. It is a sensation of sweet and restorative numbness. Your legs are heavy, your arms are heavy, and that weight is an anchor that keeps you safe in the harbor of sleep.
You realize that the night is not an absence of light, but a presence of rest. It is a tangible substance that holds you, embraces you, and protects you. In this place, nothing can disturb you. The stories have ended. The words have been exhausted. You let yourself be carried by the soft current of unconsciousness. It is a slow and dark river that rocks you gently. There is no resistance. You surrender voluntarily, with gratitude, to the absolute silence. Finally, you reach the threshold of dreamless sleep. It is a place of total purity. Here, the mind truly rests. There are no landscapes to traverse,
nor characters to meet. There only exists the comforting nothingness, the fertile void where the body and spirit regenerate. Everything goes out. The last spark of thought fades like the smoke of a candle that no longer exists. You submerge yourself into the depth. It is a perfect silence, an absolute peace, a safe darkness. You surrender, you sleep, you rest.
Everything is well. Everything is silence. Everything is sleep.